Librarians, 5 episodes, is a bad guy and a good guy. 12 Monkeys, Timeless. Altered Carbon, 3 episodes.
That was a good one.
The
first season,
Magicians,
anyway.
3 episodes. Huh. I don't see the one you were talking about, Joe.
Murphy Brown.
I do not see Murphy Brown on this list.
Must have been a different guy.
Must have been. Or I missed it, or it didn't get credited.
All of which are possible. Okay. I think we're ready.
I think we're ready.
Hey,
we're only 8 minutes late.
I mean, it seems to be working, but everybody I talk to says that FFmpeg plugin for OBS is garbage, and that's why who is it? Glorious
That's a good
Egg Roll.
one, Joe.
Glorious Egg Roll came up with the GStreamer plugin.
Yeah, I've been having fun with FFmpeg on Audacity. I'll talk about it in my wanderings.
The only time I use it for on Audacity is when I'm like importing the entire video, and then FFmpeg is used to strip the audio out of it, and that's all automatic. I can't breathe.
Nobody has claimed uBlock Origin article.
I'll get it.
I haven't claimed anything, so
Cloudflare article.
Well, I can get
I
that
guess I'll
too.
take the Cloudflare.
I've got Pocket Cast. Why don't I get uBlock?
Didn't Bill just say he was going to do uBlock?
Well, there's another one there for Bill.
Hell
Thunderbird.
is my computer doing?
Bill can do Thunderbird.
I used to use Thunderbird.
If we can
like
get his
15
wires
years
out of the
ago.
way.
Why is my computer suddenly acting like a tortoise?
That was a Thunderbird joke. Joe, you want to do the France rejecting the encryption backdoor?
Sure.
Give me a quick minute here.
And then Majid already has tails. So we're all claimed now. I don't think Bill wrote in his stuff yet. Let me go find. Yeah, there it is. Bill got Thunderbird. Joe, you were doing Cloudflare. Oh, there he is. Gee. Joe, there we go.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
So should we get this show on the road?
Oh, we got to wait for Bill now.
Yeah, waiting for Bill.
Oh,
Mr.
yeah.
Bill, Mr. Bill. No.
Oh. So what you been up to, Majid? You ain't talked in a while.
Yeah.
Other than that political nonsense that we talk about in chat.
Yeah, that was in that. It's just, as I said, sometimes I wonder whether I'm watching a badly written satire rather than the real world.
Yeah, I would agree with you if I wasn't living in the middle of that satire.
I know,
Yeah,
exactly.
You're in the worst part of the satire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we're the ones who
Tennessee isn't much better, but it still isn't Texas.
Right?
Yeah, but we're the ones who might actually get invaded by Russians. Do you know what I mean?
You might get invaded by Americans, too, so...
Oh, I saw a good
God.
meme today, had the flag of Greenland and it said MAGA, make America go away.
Oh, I like that. I like that.
Some of the responses have been pretty epic. I mean, Canada, their responses have been pretty fun.
A lot of my friends on Mastodon are actually volunteering to start a Canadian Foreign Legion to go up and fight for them.
I mean, the interesting thing is that you see, all of this has managed to resurrect the Liberal Party in Canada because they were on their way out with the.
They were on the ropes.
Yeah, and now, good old Mark Carney, a man who's not even elected, is now the Prime Minister. And, if there was an election soon, I would say that the Liberals probably would edge it. So, I suppose it's chaos theory a bit, isn't it? You just don't know how things are
Yeah.
being affected and how.
Well, that's how
Trump
they're
and
running America, and it's throwing the whole world into a chaos.
Trump and Elon seem to be the patriarchs of chaos right now. Yes,
Yeah, and
them and their chainsaw.
I mean, I am quite enjoying the amount of money that Elon is losing.
Oh yes.
Hey, right now the Tesla stock is down to 245, and if it gets down to 140, a call comes in and he automatically loses all of his control of Tesla. And Tesla is further collateral on his other loans.
Yeah.
So his whole empire goes down if it drops another $110.
In which case, keep on with the chainsaw, motherfucker. Sorry, shouldn't swear.
But we're
Watch
past
your
the first 10
fucking
seconds
language,
of the stream.
Majid.
You'll be fine.
But
Damn.
yeah, I mean it is just it's crazy. Oh no, I've been all right. I've been tied up with Ramadan. I know that I've been fasting, but there's still lots of stuff that happens. Like yesterday, there was an event that some friends had come for, and they'd invited us, and so that's how I wasn't on the meeting. And yeah, so yeah, things are all right, I suppose. I'll get to it in my wanderings, I suppose.
Okay,
But yeah,
Well, it
I'm all
looks
right,
like
Joe.
everybody's here now.
everybody's here now.
Who is
We
whose show is it?
well,
It's
I'm
Majid's.
my turn apparently.
Ah, very well.
Okay then.
Do a 3, 2, 1 though. That way I know
Okay.
where to.
Okay. 3, 2, 1, silence. Okay, take it, Majid.
Welcome to mintCast, the podcast by the Linux Mint community for all users of Linux. This is episode 457. This is episode 457.5, recorded on Sunday, March 16th, 2025.
Just another Sunday. I'm Joe.
Never a discouraging word. I'm Moss.
On the road again, I'm Bill.
Reborn, I'm Majid. So, first up in the news, Firefox's new terms aren't that bad. uBlock Origin is the most popular Firefox add-on, Cloudflare bounces browsers, and Pocket Casts goes free. In security and privacy, French government rejects security backdoors, and Tails replaces Balana Etcher with Rufus as installer for Windows. Then in our wanderings, Joe moxes the procs, Bill goes deep in the heart of Texas, Moss sings again, and I sort of learn Audacity. In our innards section, media streaming. And in Bodhi Corner, Bodhi has added new themes and work has started on Bodhi 8, so far using Debian 12 base. And finally, the feedback and a couple of suggestions. Please remember, if you want to follow along with our discussions, the full show notes for this episode are linked in the show's descriptions at mintcast.org/show notes. So, the news. Firefox's updated terms of use are not as bad as they sound. This is quite widely around on the internet, but this specific article is from the Make Use Of. Mozilla has had to clarify some of the language used in the new terms of use for Firefox. This came after some users heavily criticized the overly broad language surrounding the collection and use of user data. Mozilla introduces misunderstood terms of use. This week saw Mozilla introduce a terms of use and updated privacy policy for its Firefox browser. Unfortunately, not everyone welcomed the update and instead criticized some of the language used. In particular, the section, when you upload or input information through Firefox, you hereby grant us a non-exclusive, royalty-free, worldwide license to use that information to help you navigate, experience, and interact with online content as you indicate with your use of Firefox. Critics such as Brendan Eck pointed out that this language seemed to be overly broad, meaning it could allow Mozilla to use your data in unwelcome ways, with some suggesting it could see Mozilla provide data for AI. The language does indeed appear to be overly broad and open to interpretation, and that is a problem when you're required to agree to these terms on use when using Firefox, meaning that you have to trust your data is not going to be used against your will. Thankfully, Mozilla was quick to respond to the backlash and clarify what the language in the terms of use and privacy notice actually mean. It updated the original blog post with the following clarifications. We need a license to allow us to make some of the basic functionality of Firefox possible. Without it, we couldn't use information typed into Firefox, for example. It does not give us ownership of your data or a right to use it for anything other than what is described in the privacy notice. Further to this, a Mozilla spokesperson also told TechCrunch that these changes are not driven by a desire by Mozilla to use people's data for AI or sell it to advertisers, which, if taken at face value, is pretty clear. AIs will run out of good quality data by 2026, so how else can we keep these tools growing and thriving? As a free and open source browser, Firefox has always been viewed as a good option for those not keen on using products by the big companies. However, Firefox has a market share of just 2.5% now, way behind Google on 67%, Safari on almost 18%, and Microsoft Edge on around 5%. Mozilla isn't the force it once was. So this has been discussed by lots and lots of people, and in fact, me, Bill, and Eric did discuss it on OTC last week as well. And I'm getting the impression that this is incompetence rather than malice. That this
I
was
get that impression too. Yeah.
This was particularly poor messaging, and it was done in a particularly poor way, and things were taken out, and things were done in such a broad way that
really the only thing you can do about it is use a fork of Firefox, because nothing else really gets the job done yet.
Right.
There
There
are two
isn't
new
a whole lot
browsers
of
coming out. We'll be talking about one of them later, I think.
there isn't a whole lot of choice there, but what they did was concerning. Yes, absolutely concerning, especially when they took out all those statements saying we will never sell your data.
Yeah.
That in itself was concerning. The rest of it was there too, but as long they need to make money, they do, and they have been on a downward slope for a while now. So if they can sell anonymized data, like properly anonymized data, I'm not completely against that, because they need to pay themselves. They got to eat. They got to keep a roof over their heads.
Yeah, but they keep raising the compensation for their board, especially the CEO. And when they're losing market share, it's not the time to give yourself a pat on the back and a raise.
I think as a company, Mozilla has never been and never will be interested in communicating in a way that satisfies us, the folks in the open source community. When you listen to any communication that comes out of that company, it's always corporate speak, and the most positive thing you get out of them is like open web and some of these just broad concepts of stuff that they apparently care about. But at the end of the day, they have to make money, and they can't come out. The reality is at present, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but the vast majority of the money that goes into Mozilla is still coming from Google. And
oh yes, 100%.
As far as I know.
Yeah. And so the last thing
we're still saying you're wrong, but not on this case.
Yeah, well, I mean, it is what it is.
I've been thinking about this more since we had that discussion last week on OTC, and there, as I said, there's certain things that just kind of jump out to me. One being that their biggest user base, not biggest user base, the most loyal user base at the moment would have been the people who are privacy and security focused. And the fact that they're not trying to cater to those people is incompetence. Really, why are you going after?
But I think you started to say it in the beginning. That's not their largest user base. Their largest user base is people that are using it on Windows for whatever reason, and they just honestly could care less about the things that we are really focused on.
The privacy and security crowd is important to Mozilla right now. The problem is that crowd is only getting them 2.54% total, along with the other people that are using it.
Yeah, Bill, I think your assumption was a little premature. We really need to get some data from Mozilla as far as who is using Firefox. They have that stat.
If they want other people's numbers or some of a larger portion of the pie, then they have to branch out from their current user base.
Let me reword what I said then. it is presumable, safely presumable, in my opinion, that their largest user base is probably on something besides Linux, and that is based.
Go
That
for
is
that tail fin. Go right ahead.
yeah. Well, I mean, that's based on just the difference in users, period, between the two
Yeah.
operating systems. So,
It's true, but I think the Linux users are more loyal in general than the Windows.
well,
users.
I mean, the reason we use it is because we're loyal to it. I mean, I guess you could probably say most distributions ship it by default, and that might be a reason, but those rules don't apply on Linux near as much as they do on Windows, where Windows people are just more likely to get on with Edge, just because that's what Windows comes with.
Only 5.2%.
Well, I mean, I would think that the people who are using Firefox on Windows or Mac are legacy users. People who got into Firefox maybe 10, 15 years ago.
That's a good point,
Now
yeah.
have lots of extensions and web histories, and it's their and so people basically who jumped ship from, say, Internet Explorer, but before Chrome took off. And you can see that in the numbers. If you look at, say, around 2008 time, Mozilla had almost 20%. So when I see people who are using Firefox on Windows or even Mac, I have a friend of mine who uses it on Mac. He has been using it for donkey's years. And so the question then therefore becomes, how are they going to branch out, and how are they going to get more users? Because the people on Linux are using it because we're kind of free and open sourcey type people. The people on Windows and Mac who are using it are legacy users. So where's the new market coming from? Now and this is where I get a little bit annoyed. When you have organizations like this, because I see this in the NHS as well, when organizations are having some trouble for whatever reason, they get outside management consultants or something like this to come in, and they basically kind of try and run an organization like a committee, in the way that you're kind of saying, Bill. It's all corporate speak. It's all, let's pay the CEOs a huge amount of money so that we get the best talent. This is classic business type stuff. The thing is that what value add are you trying to show to people that will make them change from, say, Chrome or Edge or Safari? So that's my point about you trying to find a market. Now, as I said, I mean, and I might be wrong, but I would have thought that they should double down on the privacy and security thing, because there's, even the normies, the non-techies, quite a few of them are starting to get a little bit uneasy about the amount of data that is going, the amount of stuff that's
but
in.
do you think maybe they're
Chrome.
not? They can't really. They would probably love to be able to do that, but if they did that, they'd be smacking the hand that feeds them with all that
I'm
Google
wondering
money
if
coming
the
in.
forks of Firefox add up to any significant percentage. I know there are a number of security mavens using Tor.
Yeah, I mean, my only issue about that is, at the end of the day, they're downstream projects of Firefox.
Yeah.
And so Firefox still needs to be in a reasonable state
Yeah.
for you to then take it and use it. Just because I've seen quite a lot of people, saying, okay, I'm moving on to Zen or Florp or Waterfox or LibreWolf. And it's like, okay, but those are all downstream of Firefox. If Firefox was to completely implode and Mozilla was to disappear, that's a huge amount of work for people to, go on. And so,
well, there are two new browsers coming out.
But it doesn't seem to me to be a viable platform or a viable way forward to kind of say, okay, we're just going to ignore Firefox, we're going to get one of the other ones, because you're still depending on that code from. I have no answers for this. I'm very aware that I'm saying loads of stuff, and some of it might not be some of it might be contradictory, some of it might not make sense, but it just smacks to me of incompetence and corporate speak, like Bill said, of people getting together and saying, okay, well, why don't we, people who don't actually know how their business model is, how their browser works, who is using their browser, right? And trying to think of short-term solutions. And
Well,
yeah, and then you end up making massive faux pas like this.
As Londoner pointed out in one of the chats, that this is also based on European and legislation in California. So some of it was we had to do it that way.
Yeah, which is again fair enough. I mean, again, you see, this is the point about if you're transparent with your messaging, but they were so spectacularly rubbish at their messaging that and especially the taking the bit away, that rings alarm bells for anybody. A certain line that they have always pushed: we will never, or have now, or never will be doing this with your data. And then to just kind of mysteriously get rid of that as if people aren't going to notice.
That's
I mean,
why
it's just,
I say they are just completely unaware of the impact that these things have on the open source community, or they don't care. And I refuse to believe that they just full stop don't care. I think that they honestly don't understand the reaction that they will get from the open source community when they make decisions.
And as I said, it smacks to me of management companies getting involved and trying to turn a ship around who have no idea how the ship works.
Okay, so is Mozilla a company that just happens to be open source? It strikes me with projects like this that, yeah, they're open source, but it seems sometimes when you see how they communicate and you see how they operate as a business, are they just open source because that is the best way for them to make this particular product, or are they open source because they believe in the philosophies that govern it?
So what would be interesting with that is who is in a leadership role at the moment in Mozilla who has been there since the early days, because that would be if someone had been there from the beginning, who knew about free and open source software, wanted to go in that direction, wanted to make their browser open source and open web and all that sort of stuff, then they might be someone who would kind of go, oh, maybe this isn't the best thing to do, maybe this isn't the best thing to do. But I get the feeling
we could get Wikipedia to do charts like they do for bands, who was in the band during what period.
Yeah. And as I said, I get the impression that the people who are now involved in the running of Mozilla have just inherited a free and open source company in a sense, and are now trying to figure out where our market share is rubbish and we're going down and what we're going to do. I'll tell you one thing, right? And I really hope this doesn't happen. I genuinely hope it doesn't happen. But I can see some management corporate idiot saying, well, if we just took Chromium's base, then maybe a lot of our usability things would get sorted out.
Oh, you mean like Edge?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Microsoft did it, didn't do them any harm. And it'd be like, this is just so spectacularly tone deaf, right? To the whole point. You obviously don't understand the whole point of Mozilla and Firefox. You're
they don't understand it the way we understand it. They don't understand the value that we place on that project.
Okay. So your point, as you were saying earlier, when Firefox came out, when Mozilla was established, what were they? Were they specifically saying we are going to make a?
Yeah,
we are specifically going to make.
Kid just rewrote Netscape Navigator to get all the cruft out of it.
Yeah.
So I think he was 15 at the time.
So when the foundation was set up, was it set up to be a free and open source browser or just another browser?
Oh,
it was set up to be a free and open source.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Netscape Navigator got open sourced after all of the kerfuffle that they had of baking it into the system so integrally that you basically had to use it to use Windows. So it was released out into the wild. Somebody picked it up and rewrote it so that it was it was released as open source, and then they took it,
And
rewrote
was
it,
the
and made it
only
actually good open
browser
source.
out there. It was the good browser in those days.
Hey,
That was
guys.
a
For the longest
heyday.
time.
We have
Yeah.
more articles in this episode.
Yeah,
of
true. Yeah, I mean, I know.
Mozilla
I'm very much aware. I've gone off on a bit of a rant.
Well, I mean,
Yeah.
this is the article. This is the thing that's in everybody's mind right now, right or wrong.
Let's skip this next article since nobody wanted to read it anyway, and move on to.
Hey,
Did you want to read it?
who's
Because I don't see anybody. I don't see anybody's name next to it.
What, uBlock
Be
Origin?
nice. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he's being sarcastic.
we have another article on Mozilla Cast, and we should move on to the next article.
Oh, okay.
Go on, Moss.
Okay, uBlock Origin is the most popular Firefox add-on. This is from Linuxiac. Browser add-ons play a huge role in shaping the user experience, letting people customize their browsers by adding or removing features to fit their needs. Firefox, one of the most popular open-source browsers, provides public statistics on various aspects of its usage, including which add-ons are the most popular. One particularly interesting trend is the overwhelming preference for ad blockers. In fact, the top 10 most used Firefox add-ons are almost entirely dominated by them, which might be surprising to some, but totally expected to many. This is how things look at the moment. I'm not going to bother read this much. uBlock Origin's 8.27%. English language plugin is next at 3.5. Video download helper at 2.4. English language Canada 2.0. Ad blocker ultimate at 1.97. Let's say 2.0. The Great Britain English is at 1.9. Privacy Badger at 1.8. AdBlock Plus at 1.7. DuckDuckGo Privacy Essentials at 1.6. And then the language add-on for German is at 1.5. As the stats show, uBlock Origin, primarily used to block ads, trackers, and malicious websites, is the most popular add-on, making up 8% of all Firefox add-on usage. In the top 10, we also see two other familiar names, AdBlocker Ultimate and AdBlock Plus, both offering similar features. Privacy Badger, as the name suggests, is a privacy-focused add-on that automatically detects and blocks third-party trackers, also among the top preferred and installed Firefox add-ons. The only exception in this category is Video Download Helper, currently ranked third, which lets users easily download videos from the web to their computers, which of course YouTube would love to block. It's pretty obvious users want to browse the web without annoying intrusive ads getting in the way, but like most things, there's another side of the story. For many publishers, ads aren't just an extra feature. They're the primary and sometimes only way to make money from their content. Those ads help cover website maintenance costs and in many cases put food on the table. It's a delicate, multi-layered topic, but that's a conversation for another time. Now back to the point, Firefox, being an open source browser, naturally attracts users who care deeply about data privacy and internet freedom, though Mozilla's recent moves have cast some doubt on this, so it's no surprise that privacy-focused add-ons are the most popular. That said, you could also argue with a good deal of confidence that the same trend holds true for other major browsers. In conclusion, it looks like the ongoing battle between advertisers who are always looking for ways to profit from promoting products and services and users who just want clean, distraction-free content isn't going away anytime soon. As long as this struggle continues, quite expectedly, ad blockers will likely remain among the most popular browser add-ons.
Okay, so here's what I want. I appreciate that people are living on the revenue brought in by ads. So what I want is an ad blocker that also hits every one of these ads in the background and runs up their hit count. That way they get paid, but I don't have to look at them.
Yeah. Isn't that kind of what Brave does?
Have you ever tried, YouTube without an ad blocker?
Oh yeah.
My God.
Oh God.
Try and watch a
premium.
2-minute video. You spend more time freaking bouncing past ads.
Yeah.
I have commented before that I'm watching TV on my good old M700 Tiny, and if I'm watching through Firefox or through another app on the computer, it gets blocked. But if I use the on box that Bill got me, which was Android TV, all those ads get played, and it makes a whole different experience. And I'm sorry, Bill, I haven't hardly used your box.
It's okay, it was cheap.
Also suffers from having worse sound quality, which I could fix if I wanted to spend $40 on the speaker box for the TV.
So
I got a 5.1 surround system I'd give you if you wanted.
Yeah, but we ain't got room for that in our house.
yeah. So I think it's quite clear from this that people, even those who aren't necessarily privacy and thingy focused, are thinking about other things. Are thinking about, well, I'm not going to be able to use my ad blocker on Chrome. Where can I go where I can use an ad blocker? Ooh, Firefox. See, so this is again my point from before. There is a constituency out there. Go for that constituency.
Yeah.
And I think actually the next news article kind of flows with that as well. Go ahead, Joe.
Cloudflare's bot bouncer blocks weirdo web browsers. This is from the Register. Users of some of the less well-known web browsers are getting blocked from accessing multiple sites by Cloudflare's flaky browser detection routines. Aside from reporting it on Cloudflare's forum, there appears to be little users can do, and the company doesn't seem to be paying attention. Cloudflare is one of the giants of content distribution network, as well as providing fast local caches of busy websites. It also attempts to block bot networks and DDoS attacks by detecting and blocking suspicious activity. Among other things, being suspicious includes machines that are part of botnets and are running scripts. One way to identify this is by looking at the browser agent, and if it's not from a known browser, blocking it. This is a problem if the list of legitimate browsers is especially short and only includes recent versions of big names such as Chrome and its many derivatives and Firefox. The problem isn't new, and whatever fixes or updates occasionally resolve it, the relief is only temporary and it keeps recurring. We found reports of Cloudflare site blocking difficulties dating back to 2015 and continuing through 2022. In the last year, the Register has received reports of Cloudflare blocking readers in March, again in July, and earlier this year in January. Users of recent versions of Pale Moon, Falcon, and SeaMonkey are all affected. Indeed, the Pale Moon release notes for the most recent couple of versions mention that their attempts to bypass this specific issue, which often manifests as the browser getting trapped in an infinite loop and either becoming unresponsive or crashing. Some users of Firefox 115 ESR have had problems, too. Since this is the latest release in that family for macOS 10.13 and Windows 7, it poses a significant issue. Websites affected include science.org, steamdb.info, convertapi.com, and ironically enough, community.cloudflare.com. According to some in the Hacker News discussion of the problem, something else that can count as suspicious, other than using niche browsers or OSs, is something as simple as asking for a URL unaccompanied by any refer IDs. To us, that sounds like a user with good security measures that block tracking. But it seems that to the CDN merchant, this looks like an alert to an action that isn't operated by a human. Making matters worse, Cloudflare tech support is aimed at its corporate customers, and there seems to be no direct way for non-paying users to report issues other than the community forums. The number of repeated posts suggests to us that the company isn't monitoring these for reports of problems. We have asked Cloudflare to comment, and we'll update this story if it gets back to us. Our thanks to Register readers Ian West and previous commenter and certified fraud examiner Andy Pro for bringing this to our attention, as well as Pale Moon maintainer Moonchild.
So again, my point that people are now looking at other things that could other browsers from away from their usual Chrome and others, to the extent that this issue has happened. You see what I mean?
But there
I
isn't
wonder
enough.
if you can even get to my website with one of the alternate browsers, since I just re-registered through Cloudflare for my DNS.
There isn't enough people using these alternate browsers for Cloudflare to actually give a crap. It's that
That's
simple.
fair. That's fair. But I'm just saying that does it not flow as a narrative that people are looking at other things?
Yeah.
And so I make my point that I made in my rant earlier on, that there is still a constituency that Mozilla could have gone after. The specifics of Cloudflare, you're right. Why would Cloudflare give a crap?
Why are they going to, prioritize this when it's such a small percentage of the users of the internet?
Yeah,
Right.
It's completely. I mean, I don't like it, but it's completely understandable.
Well, we've got more Mozilla Cast ahead, so.
Yeah,
Lots
should we
of
just rename this? Yeah. I think Bill, this is yours.
Right, so let's get right here. Thunderbird 136 release adds new appearance controls. And this is from OMG Ubuntu. Blog alert. Desktop email client Thunderbird announces a move to monthly releases by default earlier this year, allowing new users to benefit from new features sooner, as the new Thunderbird 136.0 release makes evident. Thunderbird 136.0 sees messages auto-adapt to dark mode and adds a quick toggle to control this in the header. No more searing white email shocks in dark rooms. Also added is a new appearance setting to control message threading and sorted order globally. This is great if you always want, say, new messages at the bottom in all configured folders. Some notable fixes include ensuring that addresses clicked in the header no longer appear off-screen for those using high DPI displays, and ensuring that UI font sizes changes made in app do apply to all areas, as a few dialogues weren't hooking in. Other changes, tweaks, UI improvements, and performance buffs features include some issues may related to the previous release channel release and might not have been presented in ESR builds, including criteria for closing idle message databases changed, fix for some messages being threaded incorrectly in unified folders. Correct release channels is now displayed in, quote, about Thunderbird, unquote, dialogue. Deleting or detaching attachments in a saved .eml file now works. Assorted fixes for unified folders, including incorrect threading. Fix for IMAP, new mail notifications not showing. Sending to multiple SMTP could fail silently due to missing address book. And save link as now working for RSS feed content. Beyond that, there's a fresh round of security patches to plug newly discovered and or recently disclosed flaws. And some of those will never make their way to Thunderbird ESR channels users too. The Thunderbird Snap in Ubuntu will, AI UI, stick with ESR. So if you want to switch to the release channel version, you'll need to swap to the beta channel. You can do that in App Center, which carries version 136 at the time I wrote this. At the time I write this. Write this? Alternatively, download Thunderbird from the official website where it comes as a standalone binary runtime for Linux with relevant links to Windows and macOS builds for those who need them.
AI UI, as I understand it.
As I understand it. I am not, you kids and your internet lingo.
Us kids, yeah.
You kids and all your rock and roll
old
8-track
man.
tapes. And,
Oh God, are we doing the old get off my lawn thing again?
yeah, you kids.
Look, you were in the military. You know plenty of acronyms.
Yeah, my head is full. There's no more room for acronyms.
I can understand this.
Okay.
Well, do we have nothing to say about Thunderbird?
The only thing I wanted to say about Thunderbird is that I really do like Thunderbird, but my issues always come with because a lot of the email addresses that I would want to use in a separate client are Exchange, and I know there's a way you can get it to work, but I've never managed to do it very well. And so, as much as I like the idea, because I used to use Thunderbird regularly when my previous organization used a standard IMAP server, and I loved it. It made life so much easier when I was doing all my work stuff. But now the organization I'm at now has an Exchange one, and so it always just causes issues for me.
I think I've not used it since I was at university, and that was only because they really didn't. The email for school did not have a good web client, so I was using Outlook for a time, and then somebody turned me on to Thunderbird, and I was kind of digging the whole.
I mean, I did unpopular opinion. I actually thought Outlook wasn't too bad as a standalone program, especially now that Microsoft are getting rid of it and just basically giving you a web wrapper for Outlook, which is just pants.
Yeah.
I haven't
it's
used
just
an
pants.
email handler since Eudora went under.
Well, it's just the thing is nowadays I want my email siloed off for the most part. I still do have a Hotmail account that's 30 years old. I've got a can you say such things?
I've got a Hotmail account that I really wish I could get rid of, but it's just signed them into so many different things that I can't even remember.
You feel like you're giving away upon yourself.
Yeah.
I have a Yahoo account.
I do too.
Yeah, so do I. I used to have a Hotmail account. It's probably well dead. But the Yahoo account is specifically for things that I know are just going to spam me.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is,
I finally got rid of my AOL.in account.
Have you seen the Yahoo mobile app? I mean, it is just such a bunch of garbage. I mean, half the time you can't even actually see your own email because there's just so many bloody ads in there.
Anyone using Verizon can say the same thing because that's who owns them now.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think I don't know.
Well, I think that's all we have for Mozilla Cast today. We should move on to other news.
Yes, go ahead, Moss. Go on.
Because Moss says so.
Because Moss says so. Okay, Pocket Casts makes its web player free and criticizes corporate-owned rivals. From How to Geek. Pocket Cast's web and desktop clients no longer require subscription or login. The company previously charged $4 a month for web and desktop access, though its mobile apps have been free of charge since 2019. This is somewhat overdue, but it's a welcome change nonetheless. Pocket Cast is a fantastic platform with a clean interface and plenty of advanced functionality. We could ask Dale about that. He mentioned he uses it. Its unwavering focus on podcasting sets it apart from Spotify and YouTube. And
I use it as well.
And its platform-agnostic approach makes it a more accessible option than Apple Podcasts. Now that its browser-based web app, Mac app, and Windows app are free to use, Pocket Cast is even more accessible and appealing than before. The company frames this as an act of consumer advocacy, citing its belief that corporations are attacking the open and decentralized structure that has defined podcasts for over 2 decades. However, this change should also be seen as a response to growing pressures in the industry. Apple Podcasts recently increased its accessibility by launching a multi-platform web app, a move that threatens to poach Pocket Cast users who own a mix of iOS, macOS, Android, or Windows devices. YouTube is pushing creators toward a centralized video podcast format that siphons content and customers away from audio platforms like Pocket Casts. And Spotify is gobbling up market share by signing exclusive deals with popular podcasters. Leaning into freedom and decentralization makes sense. Quote, podcasting was built on an open, decentralized standard, RSS, which means that anyone can create, share, and listen to content freely without needing a specific platform's approval. But today, major platforms are shifting away from open standards, moving creators into proprietary systems that limit distribution and control discovery through algorithms. By making our web player available to everyone, we're reinforcing our belief that podcasts belong to the people, not corporations. Obviously, hardcore podcast users could. My tongue is not working here, folks. Obviously, hardcore podcast listeners should create a free Pocket Casts account for playback syncing, queuing, and saving subscriptions or preferences. But the ability to use Pocket Casts without a login or app download is downright awesome. If you want to share a podcast with someone, you can just send them the Pocket Casts link. And if you host a podcast, you can embed the Pocket Casts player into your blog or website. I imagine this will be very useful to tech or finance publications that operate podcasts alongside their written content. I should also point out that Pocket Cast utilizes an organic discovery system instead of an AI that promotes what's best for the platform. The company curates its podcast suggestions and offers deep search functionality so that you can find podcasts on your own. Human curation is something that helps Pocket Cast stand apart from the competition, and it contributes to the decentralized ideals that Pocket Cast is trying to associate with. Pocket Cast Plus, the $4 monthly subscription, isn't going away, but it's totally optional. Those who pony up a few bucks a month will gain neat features like subscription folders for in-app organization, Smart Shuffle, timestamp bookmarking, podcast chapter navigation, similar to chapters on YouTube, smartwatch playback, and exclusive app themes. The subscription also unlocks a year of premium Slumber Studios content. This content is not exclusive to Pocket Cast, but it normally requires a separate subscription, which isn't unusual for some podcast studios. Negative comment, there is no Linux app, but you can always use it in your browser.
Yeah, that's the kicker, isn't it? You know,
Make your own web app.
Yeah, I do use Pocket Casts on Android. I do find it slightly better to use than AntennaPod. But then I'm a weird guy that has 2 podcast players on his devices at least, so that I can have different shows at different times and whenever I want to listen to things like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like Pocket Casts. I did find it funny when it said, like other ones, such as Apple Podcast, and I was like, that's a pretty low bar. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I started out using AntennaPod, and I think I've moved to Podcast Addict. I haven't tried.
Yeah, Podcast Addict had a few too many ads, which is a bit annoying. I found.
Hence the name.
But that was me. Yeah, true. Hey, boom, boom. Available for weddings, birthdays, and bar mitzvahs.
Don't at me, folks.
Yeah. So, anywho, I think after all of that, we might have actually been done with the news. And so we will now move swiftly on into that fantastic era of the podcast, which is security and privacy.
Oh, see, look at that. We got some this time.
Yeah, we got 2.
It's way too late for Swiftly.
Yes. Okay, I was being sarcastic. Anywho,
France,
go ahead, Joe.
I got it. France rejects controversial encryption backdoor provision. This is from Tech Radar. Encryption refers to scrambling data into an unreadable form to prevent third-party access. End-to-end encryption is the reiteration that messaging apps and secure email services, among other tools like today's best VPNs, use to protect data in transit by keeping it private between the sender and the receiver, end-to-end. As cryptographers and other experts have long argued, however, it's not possible to create an encryption backdoor that only good guys can exploit. Commenting on the French case, CEO of Tuta Mail, Matthias Fau, said a backdoor for the good guys only is a dangerous illusion. Weakening encryption for law enforcement inevitably creates vulnerabilities that can and will be exploited by criminals and hostile foreign actors. In 2016, France also rejected an amendment to its Digital Republic law requiring the creation of an encryption backdoor. The provision was introduced as an attempt to fight against terrorism, but was deemed a vulnerability by design by France's digital minister at the time. Axel Lamar, the Register reported. As the Global Encryption Corporation warned in an open letter published on March 4th, a backdoor would have also weakened the French messaging app Olvid, which was officially certified by the country's cybersecurity agency and recommended to French ministers and government officials. Considering the Salt Typhoon hack in the US, which sparked a warning to switch to encrypted services, and France's concern for Russian alleged cyber attacks, as Politico reported, the reliance by the French government, citizens, and businesses on end-to-end encryption to keep themselves safe and secure has never been greater, noted experts. The National Assembly eventually listened to concerns from the industry and scrapped the encryption backdoor requirement in the bill on March 6th. Despite the widespread criticism, however, France's Interior Minister, Bruno Retailleau, confirmed his support for the encryption backdoor provision as a necessity to ensure maximum efficiency in combating organized crimes, Le Monde reported. Commenting on this point, Bozakov from Tuda Mail told Tech Radar, "I am worried that politicians still do not understand anything about cybersecurity, even though there are enormous foreign threats right now targeting our societies, mainly from Russia and China. France's attempt to undermine encryption may have been halted once again. However, the country isn't alone in pushing to pick the lock of encrypted communications to facilitate criminal investigations." Wow, I see why you guys wanted me to read this one. Sweden is also considering passing a similar requirement for the likes of Signal, WhatsApp, and iMessage. If successful, the new rules could come into force as early as March 2026. These plans have already attracted strong criticism from the tech industry, with Signal President Meredith Whittaker reiterating that Signal would rather leave the country than undermine its encryption protections. On February 21st, 2025, Apple was even forced to kill its iCloud end-to-end encryption feature in the UK following a government order to create an encryption backdoor. Since 2022, the EU has also been trying to pass its chat control proposal to scan citizens' private communications, including encrypted messages, to halt the spread of child sexual abuse material. As Romain Dignow, public policy manager at Proton, the provider behind Proton VPN and Proton Mail, points out, while these efforts are nothing new and tend to fail, as in the case in France, they consistently come back. What we see is creativity from law enforcement to try and push the same old concept with new names, and that's concerning. Dignow told Tech Radar, "The side client scanning is a clear example of that. That's just an encryption backdoor, but with a fancy name, something that sounds more technical and more acceptable to people who don't necessarily understand how the tech works."
That's Romain Dignow.
Thank you.
That's close enough.
So-
I thought that UK backtracked on that. Apple pushed hard enough that UK decided, well, okay, we really can't do that, can we?
I haven't heard
I-
that.
Kind of, but then Apple's way around it was just to say that it's a feature that's not going to be in the UK,
Yeah.
which was kind of like that's kind of like throwing all your toys out of the pram, isn't it?
But,
in a way of getting
kudos to
But I mean,
them.
if it worked, I
Pram.
suppose. But I do think that this is going to get more and more in the
It's
news.
been it's happened in America where the government has tried to enforce this and failed miserably. I'm sure it's happened in most countries and failed miserably. And the places where it didn't fail, what's going to happen is it's only going to be the mainstream ones that are going to have the back door. People will come up with new stuff all of the time for end-to-end encryption applications. Even if you have to sideload them, people still want their privacy, especially the people that they say that they're concerned about. And, monitoring an entire population just to catch the occasional criminal, even if it is heinous.
Well, that's because
criminals.
that's not what they're doing, isn't it? It's all about keeping an eye on your populace. That's what it's about.
Yeah.
And it always has been about that. And now, thankfully, those of us who live in more democratic countries, it's people can push back, but there's lots of places in the world where it's just not possible.
And once again, it's like door locks. They only keep good people good. You know, they only keep law-abiding people from breaking the law. That's it.
Yeah, very true.
You use these. It's not going to be the criminals using these. It's going to be your average citizen using these, and your criminals will find other ways to do it, as will your security conscious people. So there won't be any way to really tell the difference even then.
So I mean, it seems to be more of a kind of a land grab by governments and authorities rather than anything that would actually make anybody safer.
I don't ever see this type of thing. It might make it through some vetting process, some voting process, but I don't ever see it practically being put into place and actually being effective in any meaningful way.
No, I would agree with that. So, our second security and privacy story, Tails replaces Balana Etcher with Rufus as the installer for Windows. So this is from Tails.net via Londoner. So Tails has replaced Balana Etcher with Rufus in the installation instructions for Windows to solve privacy concerns with Balana Etcher. Since January 2019, they have been recommending Balana Etcher to install Tails from Windows and macOS. They say they love the simplicity of Balana Etcher, which was really easy to use and worked on macOS as well. It is actually quite easy to use. I've used it in the past. Shortly after, Balana Etcher started displaying ads. Although Tails didn't like that, they initially didn't view it as a significant privacy risk and had no better alternative at the time. However, in 2024, the situation changed. Balana Etcher started sharing the file name of the image and the model of the USB stick with the Balana company and possibly with third parties. While Tails has not experienced or heard of any attacks against Tails users stemming from this change, they believe it introduces potential for abuse. To eliminate that risk altogether, they've started looking again for alternatives. After evaluating 7 other tools, Tails finally chose Rufus, another program I've used, and it works quite well. They had tested Rufus many years ago, but even before recommending Balana Etcher, but it was much harder to use and modified the Tails image in ways that were risky. Congratulations to Akio Consulting, the company behind Rufus, for really improving the usability and reliability of their tool. Tails has not yet replaced Balana Etcher in our installation instructions for macOS because Rufus doesn't work on macOS. Again, I don't. Okay, interesting. Also, as Tails doesn't work on Apple M1 and M2, people who install Tails from macOS represent less than 10% of installations nowadays. I would have thought it'd be even less, actually. Still, they recommend 2 alternatives for macOS, installing Tails using DD on the command line, which is, I'm sure, what the real folk do, or using Raspberry Pi Imager.
I would think 10% is a rather high number, considering what percentage we were talking about Mozilla, both in terms of Mozilla's market share and the percentage of Mozilla users who are concerned about privacy. That 10% of Tails, well, Tails is pretty niche anyhow, but still.
Yeah, I mean, I would be very surprised if it's anywhere near 10%, I would say. It would probably be in the single digits.
Okay.
Yeah, I like Rufus actually. It used to be my usual way of burning a distro onto a USB. Banana Etcher I found becoming a bit random anyway, but I just thought it's interesting that
I never could get
Tails
Etcher to run, but it only came in a app image, and I couldn't get the bloody thing to run no matter what I did, so I just never used it.
You didn't have Fuse
I've never
2.
tried Rufus. I really love the tool in Linux Mint. Everyone should.
Yeah, talk
Do you
about.
not find the Mint? Do you not find the Mint the Mint one a little bit buggy? I do.
No, it works every time for me.
Okay.
I've
Must
had
be me.
weird cases
Are
that I
you-
can't name right now that did not work with the Mint tool, with Mint, what's it called, Mint Stick.
Yeah, Mint Stick.
There's been a couple of times over the years where it just didn't work. Like it ran and it acted like it worked, but then the USB would be unbootable. But
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
been a long time.
Yeah,
If
that's
that
what I've had
happened,
with
I
it as
wasn't
well.
aware enough to know that that's what was happening.
But Balana Etcher.
I mean, so that's why I haven't used it, and that's why I've been using Rufus, or I used to use Unet Bootin back in the day as well.
Gosh.
Yeah,
Yes.
I did use Unet boot in a lot.
Is that
bet
what
I still have it
Ubuntu
installed
is
on a
still? Is that what Ubuntu is still shipping with? Unet boot in, or however you say that.
Don't think.
None of
Maybe.
us
I
know.
never knew if that was actually an I or if it was an L, but yeah, Unet boot in, whatever.
Yeah.
Nope,
Yeah,
I'm
so I
still
mean,
a
it's
Blink
so,
Etcher user,
yeah,
and this
I
isn't
mean,
going to stop me.
yeah, I mean, I can imagine.
Are we done, or are we run
No, I was
out
just
of
gonna.
privacy?
No, I was just gonna say. So, what do? So, Joe, you normally use Balana Etcher, do you? And Marcy, you normally use Mint Stick. What was it that you said you normally use, Bill?
I mean, I try to use Etcher. I don't know. I probably ought to use Mint Stick just to try it in the beginning, but it seems like Etcher works a little bit better with the Windows stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Or
Well, through Bodhi 6.1, I could even use Mint Stick on Bodhi.
Oh,
For some
don't
reason, it
hold
doesn't
your
work.
horses there, Moss. We're not yet to Bodhi
we're not
Corner
to Bodhi.
yet.
Oh, I
I'm
know
not
the problem.
talking about the corner. I'm
I
talking
think-
App
about the
image.
edges.
You need
App image.
you need something like Etcher if you're going to burn like a .img file if it's not already an ISO,
Okay.
because Etcher will do all of the converting in the background and all that, and then
As will Raspberry Pi Imager, which is
Yeah.
probably why it's listed there.
Can you
Raspberry
use
Pi
that
Imager works
for-
really well.
yeah, I've never had a problem with it, but I've only ever used it for Raspberry Pi images though. So
Yeah, no, it works with other things as well.
oh, that's cool.
I'm not gonna say I've used it a lot, but I've used
You
it
gotta,
for.
I think you got to do some more jumping through hoops because you got to tell it to look for local files instead of its list of files, and then
Yeah, you
yeah.
do. But I remember using that. I might have even used it in routing a phone and flashing, but I might be getting confused there. Anywho, let's move on to the bi-weekly wanderings. Go on, William.
Ooh, I'm always in trouble when somebody uses that name.
Mr. Bill, Mr. Bill.
Oh God, if I had a nickel, I'd probably have like $3.50.
That's
Yeah,
brilliant.
wanderings. Work. What can I tell you? For the last couple months, it's, with a couple of exceptions here and there, I've been doing a run which takes me into Sinton, Texas, which is a little town in the southern part of the state. And Texas, let me tell you, is considerable in size. In my case, when I get to the state line, it's a whole another day's drive to get to where I'm going down there. There's a steel mill down there where we take aluminum. They're tiny little aluminum ingots in the shape of a cone that they'll fit in the palm of your hand. They weigh about, I don't know, a pound or two a piece. And apparently they go into the steel mixture to make the mixture, or make the steel more malleable. I don't know. I didn't know. Making steel, as it turns out, it's almost a religious process. And the people that are good at it are really good at it. And then from there, I reload in Fort Worth, Texas, which is basically heading back north out of Sinton for a day, and I'm still in Texas. And then I deliver that in Kentucky and then go home, and that usually takes the entire duration of the week.
There is a lot of Texas out there.
Texas is the one state where if you're going from like Interstate 10 or 20 is the long one that you cannot, one driver cannot legally cross it in a single shift.
One truck driver cannot cross it.
Right. Well, yeah, because we're arguably over-regulated to where we can only drive 11 hours in a 14-hour. Well, in a
What are you
24-hour
trying to
period.
say, that America's over-regulated? I thought Doge was sorting that out.
I have a feeling that if Doge gets into our business at all, it won't have anything to do with the regulations that directly affect. Anyway, I don't want to get into that. So yeah, that's been for the past couple months, that's been my life. And a lot of that is because November and December almost put me in the poorhouse. Not really, but there wasn't much extra money to spend. And so it felt really austere. And So
What you mean? You can only buy 2 microphones rather than 3.
I knew that was I was giving everybody all the opportunity you needed. Yeah,
You almost
no,
had to cancel your Netflix subscription?
it was rough, you know. I had to change from full coverage insurance down to liability on my pickup truck. It was terrible.
Oh God!
Very.
The horror.
No, that's the
shame
insurance
in
companies.
humanity.
That's the insurance companies. That probably didn't save them a whole lot of money.
Well, my 16-year-old just started driving, and my car insurance went.
That'll
from,
cost you a lot.
Oh my goodness! I
Double.
was paying.
Imagine having 2.
I was paying.
My son. I bought my son a Nissan Micra, which is almost 19 years old. It's worth £1,300. The insurance for it was 2,600.
It's
Literally double.
Once you get the kids, I mean, I was paying next to nothing before because my last accident was 20 years ago. My last ticket was 15 years ago. And so, I mean, it was as good as it could get for 52-year-old man, you know, and you just, it's as good as it gets. And then you put a teenager on there and boom, it's like, it almost felt like high risk insurance. But there you go. And a lot of what I think was going on in November and December was just we work a lot with the scrap industry and then the raw steel and aluminum and stainless industry, and I think they were in kind of a holding pattern, if you will, waiting to see how things go after the election, after the inauguration, and inexplicably, it feels like things. I'm not real sure how to explain why things are so good right now, except to say that maybe these industries in the United States are anticipating better business because all of the tariffs against foreign metals and things like that. I don't want to get into that either. But yeah, it's been pretty busy, and I've been taking advantage of it. I've got the Mid-America Trucking Show at the end of the month this month, the 27th, 28th, and 29th in Louisville, Kentucky. And Three Fat Truckers is going to be there. Cha-ching. And I think after that, I'm going to slow down. I'm going to slow down on some of this over-the-road stuff a little bit because I don't think I've gained any weight because I've actually gone back. I should have wrote this down. I didn't think of it at the time. I've been to the doctor since I've started exercising and losing weight, and my A1C is down to 5.8, and I've lost 35 pounds.
Well done, man.
Yes, thank you. By their records, and she's actually taken me off of 2 medications. Reduced one medication, took me completely off another. So that was positive, you know. But in the back of my mind, I've got this fear of bouncing back to my old ways because on the road, it's just way too. There's a huge
Convenient.
Convenient. Now, I do have a new truck, and I've got a microwave in there, and I've got a little bit better living quality. I can actually make more food that I bring from home, and I don't have to rely on what I can buy on the road, you know. So that's improved things quite a bit. I've got a refrigerator in there and everything, you know, so I can basically get by for the entire week. So it's not near the issue that it once was, but at the same time, I really don't want to go back to my old ways of just getting out of bed and like falling. I make my bed in the morning and then just fall into the driving seat and work throughout the day. And in the comments, Free Thinkers saying too many people are using Ozempic. Is it safe? Well, I think the most important thing, and it's interesting you bring that up, is because I've got so many friends that I work with, and they've lost tons of weight, and it's all because of something like Ozempic or Mounjaro or something like that. And the question is, that's great. but you've done nothing to change your lifestyle along with these drugs that you're taking.
Yeah, and that's
And
the worry, isn't it? That, you will reset, as it were. You might lose the weight, and then the minute the injections are gone, you're just going to get back. It has to be a lifestyle change,
yeah,
and these drugs make it easier for you to do that lifestyle change, but you have to do it because that's what ultimately will maintain you at a healthy weight and a healthy level.
yeah,
It's like the equivalent of doing a reboot. You rebooted your computer, you've done a nuke and pave, great. But if you're still going to install all sorts of shit on it, it's still going to become slow.
yeah. That's absolutely true. And that's why it was real important for me to try to do it on my own without any of that stuff. Also because I can't afford it. So, anyway, yeah, so that's what I've been doing. Also, normally on the weeks after a live stream, I take 2 laptops on the road with me. One of them is considerably more powerful than the other, and I usually only take that one with me on the weeks after we do mintCast because I have to do the audio editing, and then usually I have to do that on the road. And both of these machines are running Arch. Now,
You run Arch, do you?
on those machines, I do. Yes, thank you.
I never knew that.
Well, the command to fully update an Arch installation in the terminal is sudo pacman tac SYU. Now, what happened, and this got past me, what you're supposed to do is before you do updates, you're supposed to go check the Arch Linux website and make sure that nothing is broke and it doesn't require any manual intervention. But I'm going to come out and say this right now. I bet if you line up 100 Arch users, 2 or 3 of them are going to actually say that they do that. The rest of us just run the update commands. And in my case, I've got a script that I have on GitHub that you can run and updates everything from top to bottom. And I run that all the time. Well, unbeknownst to me, Arch had gotten rid of one of their package repos 2 years ago. I didn't realize. See, the way Arch has worked in the past is all of the packages are divided up into 3 repos. You've got your core, which has got basically all of your core utilities that have to be installed no matter what on any system. And then the extra repo, that's where you would have all of your necessary dependencies for desktop environments, including all those packages to install them. All of the really, really mainstay Linux stuff is going to be in the extra repo. And then the community repo was like the next step down from the AUR, where packages would go, like, for example, I think Audacity was in the community repo. That's where like all third-party stuff would go. And that was by far the largest repo of the 3. And what had happened 2 years ago is they had merged the community repo with the extra repo, so there was actually only 2 main repos. Now, I appreciate somebody's going to write in, well, you're forgetting about the multi-lib. Yeah, there is another repo for the 32-bit stuff. Leaving that aside, they merged the community with the extra, but they had been aliasing or rerouting to where if you still had the community repo enabled on your system, the update command would still work because it would just reroute that to the extra repo. And I just been doing things normally all this time, not knowing. I thought it was a little strange that it kept saying that the community repo was already up to date every time I would run the update, but I would let it go. And then last week it said that community and extra had been merged, and now I had to go searching online, and I did a post on on the Arch forums, and I got the usual, you're stupid, you shouldn't be using Linux, go back to Windows kind of attitude that you get,
Especially with Arch people, it seems.
There's one or two people that will give that whole community kind of a bad rep, But most people, the reason I bring this up is because in previous episode we were talking about nuke and pave versus update in place. And this is a problem you will run into inevitably when you update in place over a long period of time. And your config files will just keep getting merged or not changed at all. And that's exactly what happened in this case, is that when Arch updates, it doesn't do anything to your config files. It will download the new config file, and it will give it the file extension .pacnew, and then just sit it there in the file system next to your config file. But the program is still sourcing your original config file. So eventually you're going to run into a situation where things are going to start to break, and it's all because you've been ignoring all these new configs that have been coming down. Whereas if it was a new installation, I would have the updated config and then move on. In Arch, you have to do all that manually. You've got a command called pacdiff, which will go through, and it uses vimdiff to compare the files and give you the option to merge them or replace them all together with the new one or keep the old one. You wouldn't want to just go through and wholesale replace all of them, which is an option. But if you did that, then you would lose all of the manual settings that you might have made over the period of time that you've had that installation. But I thought this was interesting because it was a problem that came up for no other reason than I've been updating in place on those machines for a long period of time and just ignoring the changes to the config files. And that can get you into a lot of trouble. So it's something to consider, because even on a distribution where you've got your hand held for some time, you are still going to run into a problem if it's a config that you've made manual changes to. You're going to run into a problem where the new config is not getting merged, and you have to manage that yourself. And not everybody knows how to do that, So it is something to consider, like maybe every now and then it's a good idea to do a fresh install. That's just my opinion. So anyway, that's all I've got. How about you, Joe?
Well, thank you, Billy. Minimal 3D printing, but some interesting things. I had been working on the bag hook that I use at work, and I talked about it some last show where I had issues with the print quality in certain parts, outer walls being wavy, and some small issues with wall adhesion, but not layer adhesion. I tightened up the belts to make sure it was not a precision problem, but I had not seen much improvement in quality, so I decided to switch to PETG in case it was simply a matter of the spool of PLA that I had being wrong somehow. And I wanted to see how well it worked. Well, it printed the wavy walls. That issue was still there. But the biggest problem was that it was extremely brittle. I was able to snap it into chunks with very little difficulty. I had been trying to print it quicker, and the box was suggesting much higher temps. As it was, that particular roll was saying 230 to 250 degrees. So I had the nozzle temp set pretty high, and this can lead to brittleness in PETG. I turned the heat and the speed down and tried a quicker print since the bag hook was a long print to begin with. Instead, I printed a stand for Moss to fit his Lenovo ThinkCenter Tiny. The first one did a little better and the changed settings, but there was a very serious problem on the top layer not coming out. I ended up increasing the infill and lowering the temp even more to well below the suggested temp, and it came out pretty darn good and not really brittle at all. It's not as snug as I would like, but I think it might be good to add a little bit of fabric anyway, and there should be just enough room for that. My messing around with the mini rack has slowed a lot, with work getting in the way and a few 14-hour days in a row. But I'm also not a fan of taking it apart to do the hardware stuff that I had. I did end up doing it, but still, I got some of the software side of things played around with. All the printing that I have done has been from the Octopi Docker image, so that is working well with USB pass-through. I also got my audio bookshelf instance working mostly the way that I want it to, but I need to work on the permissions for writing so they can act as a podcatcher and player as well. I also, once again, spent a couple of days working on PCI pass-through on the Proxmox box, this time so that I could give the graphical portion of the APU to one of the VMs so that it could be hooked up to a monitor. I cannot express how frustrating this was without going through the tedium of the process. But I was able to get things working in the end after turning on UEFI for the VM and turning off the no VNC display. The USB pass-through for the VM was pretty easy so that I could use a keyboard to set up some external control stuff for now, including KDE Connect, Barrier, and X2Go. And then I disconnected the keyboard and mouse and started using Barrier. I also pulled out a USB sound card and a set of headphones to test the sound functionality. I also needed to make sure that was passed through, but that's pretty old hat at this point. Very happy with how it turned out. I could have jumped through the hoops to try and set up the headset jack on the PC itself or to split out the audio on the HDMI, but I just figured I would save my sanity and just use the USB audio card. All of this so that I can do it again on the computer that Moss sent me and be able to have another Proxmox node and a set-top box at the same time. The processor is exactly the same, and all I need to do is bump up the RAM and everything should be good. Then I decided to go ahead and do the upgrades. I pulled the ProDesk off the rack and opened it up. The RAM upgrade from 12 to 36 gig seemed easy enough. Then I put in the NVMe to 5 SATA ports with the right angle adapters. Sadly, the case just barely would not fit back on. I had found some other much lower profile cables that probably would have worked, but they were much more expensive per cable, somewhere between $7 and $15 per cable, and I would have to wait for them to show up. I ended up getting out some foam 2-sided tape and dirtied it up a bit to make it less sticky on one side, and then placing it in position on top of the connectors, and then set it on the case, lined it up as much as possible. Then I got out my Dremel and some cutter blades, and I made a hole. This worked beautifully. I got the wires run through the back of the casing from the hole for the serial port that I removed, and put some tape over the hole for the connectors. Then I removed the casing for the 2.5-inch SSD and then used some Kapton tape to protect the exposed metal parts, and wedged it in there since its space is now mostly being taken up by the SATA connectors. I hooked up the drives that were previously connected from the USB-C to multi-SATA adapter, which was an 8 terabyte and two 250 gigabyte drives, while also adding in the power and data extension cables that I got, so that I could more easily slide them in and out. Now I need to go through some cable management again, but not today. Imagine my frustration after I got it put back together and into the rack, and it started beeping to me about a RAM error. I had to pull it back out and reseat the RAM, and then it started up, but the drives were not seen and the virtualization had turned itself off. I was able to get the virtualization on easy enough, but it took updating the BIOS and then realizing that I needed to turn off Optane to get the drives to be seen. Then sadly, I had to wipe the drives in order for Proxmox to use them properly. But okay, the 2 smaller drives are going to be LVMs, where I will store VMs and start up images. And I've already started splitting up the 8 terabyte for data on the other VMs. And that's pretty much what I've been up to. I'm kind of happy that it worked so well. Boss?
Who, me? Oh, I gotta wake up again? Oh, damn. Okay, I performed a half-hour concert in the Festival of the Living Rooms last night. This has been going on. During COVID, it was monthly, and it has more recently switched to quarterly. and this will be the 4th time I had played at Festival of the Living Rooms. I think it went well. I got 7 songs in, only one of which I wrote. But on Friday night, they opened Filking. Mark Grossman played a filk he wrote of a song I never would have touched. It's just too powerful. But after he desecrated it, I completely misheard what he was singing. Voila, I had a new song of my own. Finally got it done around 4 a.m. before going to bed. I performed the new song in the Saturday Night Open Circle, and it was quite well received. My guitar Lenore sounded fantastic on the rock setting. Actually, on the recording, I needed to have turned it up some because I really needed to be on 2 channels with the guitar so I could do up and down as needed. But that was not the way my Audacity is set up. So, I was pleasantly let's speak. I was pleasantly surprised at receiving an email from one of the teachers I substitute for, the one who teaches the chemistry and computer science. I think I mentioned it on an earlier show, requesting I sub for him on April 10th. That's a Thursday. I very rarely work on anything other than Monday or Friday. For pecuniary reasons, I get paid $10 more for those days. But wow. So yes, I made an exception. The app we use for scheduling is a real bear, but we finally got things set up so that I could work that day and not get called in for other Thursdays. He also said he had taken a listen to Full Circle Weekly News and enjoyed it. Win-win. I submitted my first Bodie Corner article for Full Circle magazine. While the name is the same as what I'm doing here in mintCast, I'm taking a different and more personal approach, keeping the technical stuff here for mintCast. At least for the time being, I'm not duplicating material between the 2 sources. The article will appear in this month's Full Circle magazine and will continue as long as I can find something to write. That's it for me. Majid?
So, Moss, I just wanted to
No.
say that.
Who?
So that is the first time I've seen the word pecuniary used outside of a cremation form. When we do cremation forms in the UK, one of the things that the doctor has to do is sign a thing which says that I do not have any pecuniary reasons for doing this, and I have
Yeah.
no relation with the
There's
with the
nothing in it
deceased.
for my pocket. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So I was just to say, I had flashbacks of doing cremation forms, and I actually had a question for you, Joe. Actually, about your wanderings. What are you using for your audio bookshelf exactly?
Well, I have a couple of different instances of Audio Bookshelf currently set up.
Okay.
The one I've been using for the longest time is actually installed bare bones
Okay.
on my garage computer. What I've done is on my Proxmox machine inside. Wait, no, that one's not on a VM. It's on an LVM that has access to a network share.
Okay.
So the LVM is a Docker instance of Audio Bookshelf.
Okay. So you were saying something about turning it into like a podcast or podcatcher as well.
It has podcatcher functionality built into it. My garage computer uses that currently to download the podcast that I listen to that computer, and then I stream it to my phone.
Okay, all right.
But because of the read-write issues with LVMs, I'm having trouble writing to the network share. So if I can't write, I can't download a podcast.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. Interesting. Okay then. Onto my wanderings then. So it's Ramadan here, the month of fasting. I tried fasting last weekend, 2 weeks ago when the last show was on. That didn't go well. Diabetes and other health problems do not go well with that kind of thing. So I'm trying to find other ways of trying to make use of the month. It has meant quite a few trips out. Yesterday we were at a very nice fundraising meal for an institute in London, meeting some old friends. You know, you have certain friends which really aren't friends, but they're family. You know, they feel like more like family because you've known them for forever. And yeah, so it was very nice to see them. This does mean actually that I might not be here on the next episode because the next episode I think coincides with Eid. And if it is Eid, then sorry guys, but otherwise, anyway. So again, you'd probably think that having been about a month or so since I've been on, I'd have loads to talk about. I've got a little bit to talk about, not as much though. So my adventures with Plex still continue. You know, frequent listeners will know that I've been trying to set up Plex on my NAS, and the most recent issue seems to be about accessing it from outside the network, which I know there's a disable remote there's a remote access thing there on the settings and all that sort of stuff, but randomly it will just keep saying it's offline, so that I can't even then access the stuff from within the network. But at the same time, the NAS is still there and it's still available there on my network, and if I wanted to just get onto it and through any kind of file explorer and do it as a Samba share, I can still see the stuff and I can still play the media and stuff like that. But for some reason, Plex would then say it's offline. I have no idea. I've gone round the houses a little bit, and now I've lost a little bit of interest. But hopefully, since we're going to be talking about media streaming, maybe I'll learn some great insights from everyone, which will help. Which would help. I gave up on Jellyfin completely. I just thought I'd stick with Plex because I was, as I've mentioned again before, I couldn't get my head around Docker and stuff. The Atypical Doctor podcast has been reborn. What I mean by that is that I hadn't done any episodes for a while. I hadn't done any episodes since I rebranded it from Atypical Anesthetist to Atypical Doctor. And I thought it was time to get back to that. And in coordination with Bill, I managed to get a website. Well, I've got a domain name.
Working on the website. Check.
Yeah, we're still working on the website, but yeah, so check this space for that. And this, led to quite a few interesting conversations around web hosting, which we had on OTC, and I've had with Bill separately as well, and how web hosting works and the kind of the practicalities and the logistics. As someone who has never actually made a website before. It also meant that if I'm going to restart it, I need to interview someone. And I thought my favorite fat trucker would be the best way of starting off. So Bill very kindly was my interviewee. And once I have figured out Audacity, we will get that published. What I mean by figure out Audacity is that I thought to myself, instead of getting Bill to do it for me, which he quite kindly offered, I thought I need to learn exactly how to make a podcast, through Audacity. In the past, I've been just using the kind of Spotify in place things that they have, and not actually had to do any kind of lining up tracks and putting a theme tune and all that sort of stuff before. So I've been learning how to do that, and that's when I came across this thing called FFmpeg, because it seems that when I tried to put some kind of filler music in between, Creative Commons type stuff, like stuff that we use on mintCast or OTC, for some reason Audacity wasn't seeing it, and then I found out that's because there were WAV files or MP3 files, and therefore I needed this thing called FFmpeg, which I then did, and now it's there, but apparently it still can't see those files. So then what I ended up doing was converting the WAV and MP3 filler music things that I had into FLAC, and then trying to import it in that way, which I have a feeling is a bit of a hack or a ring around, but been watching a couple of tutorials on YouTube as well, which have been very helpful. And actually, in a perverse kind of way, I'm kind of enjoying it, actually. Actually doing the nitty gritty and, as I said, lining up the stuff, getting rid of the bits before and bits after.
It's strange you bring that up. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
Like in our case, for a lot of people that don't know, our theme music for mintCast was done by my son. He's got a little electronic music thing, and he uses WAV files, so that all of our like the intro music, as well as like the little jingle that's in between the segments, and those are all waves, and those like copy paste right into the waveform just fine as waves. So it's interesting that you're having that problem.
I mean, I don't know whether it's maybe because I'm putting them as separate tracks and not putting it into a track. I don't know if that's a separate, if maybe that's what I'm doing wrong or.
So what I do is I import the track so that it's there as, and then I copy the entire track, like select it and then copy it, and then it's sitting there in the clipboard, and then I just put the line where I want it to go, and then Control V right there.
So that's what I was trying. So what I was doing was first I was importing it, but that was where it failed, because I would import it and it would be there as a separate track, but it would be empty. But if I then opened another instance of Audacity and imported it into that, then it would show up. And I don't know why it was doing that, why it wasn't doing it on the original project, but as a new project, it was there.
That's a strange one.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably me, and I'm probably made some schoolboy error. But it's it's a learning process, isn't it? And both this thing with Audacity and the whole web hosting project, have kind of brought those things of convenience versus education again. Like on one of the OTCs where Leo was basically telling me to learn HTML, and you don't need to do this, you don't need to do that. You need to learn it from the ground up. And I get what he was trying to say and
that
what
was
he was
crazy,
trying to say. Yeah, but at the other hand, there is a bit of, you do want a bit of a plug-in play, and you need to find a kind of balance of where you think you're learning something, how to do something, and learning a skill that you can then use, versus I just want to get shit done. And I think I'm still trying to find where that line is. At the moment, I think I'm still on the line of, okay, I am willing to give this time to figure it out. But then, like I was saying about the Plex and Jellyfin thing earlier, I hit that line of, okay, I'm done now. I just need this damn thing to work.
Well, you want both of those things, right? You want to learn how to do this stuff, but in the meantime, you need your thing up and running so that you can start using it,
Yeah. So that's where we are with that. I need to actually sit with Bill at some point again to actually get this stuff up on the website. But let me at least make the episode first. I haven't made the episode yet. I'm starting to get itchy, and that's not a medical problem. I mean, in the sense of I've been running Mint now on this box for a while, and it's been brilliant. I've been using Ubuntu on my laptop for a while, and it's been fine. And so I shouldn't need to change distro. But my mind goes towards, I wonder what things are like in something else land. But at the same time, nothing is kind of calling out to me to have a go. Like I remember when I had that experiment with Endeavour OS, for example, or when I had the experiment with Aurora and immutable distros. There was something there to kind of do something different. And the most that I can kind of come up with is, should I go towards Fedora because it's not Debian based? And so that's a bit kind of not really a massive reason to check something out. So if anybody's got any ideas what distro I should try next, except Arch, let me know. Actually, I did
tell him Moss Bodhi.
Yeah, I knew he would say Bodhi. You know what? Actually, it's been a long time since I tried Bodhi. I mean, a long time. I mean, it's been at least a decade.
Yeah.
So maybe. Okay. My tour of all the
it has changed a lot in 10 years. I mean, I couldn't even get it to run on 3.1, and in fact, I couldn't get it to run on any machine I had until 5.0. And then 5.1 was just so much better because that's when Robert Wiley took over. And right now he's starting to work on 8, even though not all of our betas on 6 and 7 are finished.
Okay, well, maybe in my next wanderings I'll be telling you about my Bodhi adventure then.
Well, you might want to make a list, because in the YouTube comments, listener says to try Puppy. Now that would be
Oh,
interesting.
I tried Puppy. I mean, it's no.
No,
You,
I mean,
you can't really do heavy work with Puppy.
well, it's
It's
not
a
necessarily you
great
can't do
thing.
heavy work. I mean, okay, for me, the whole point of Puppy is you get it to run on obscenely low hardware, and it can resurrect things which are, you thought were e-waste, which is great. For whatever reason, most of the boxes and machines that I have now are reasonably well powered. I think the oldest core I've got is like this one, which is a 8th gen Core i5. I don't think I've got anything that's less than 16 gig of RAM. So I mean, I don't. Yeah, if I had like
16
my
gig,
old.
really.
Yeah, I don't
You
think.
can run
In
anything.
in fact, one of the laptops has got 32.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a bit
Well,
what would be the point trying Puppy? But hey,
Bodhi is almost as lightweight as Puppy anyhow, and it's so much more
but I like the shiny.
beautiful
I
on the
like the
screen. Yeah,
shiny. I like the
Bodhi got
shiny.
shiny.
You got
Bodhi
shiny on
lots of
Bodhi.
shiny.
That is the thing about Moksha, and well, I guess I should say, enlightenment, and by extension Moksha, is that you've got all the benefits of a modern interface with very lightweight.
with the footprint of Joe's window manager.
Yeah. It's crazy. It's lighter than XFCE, but it feels more modern. It really does. So
yeah. So okay. Well, anyway, if anybody else, so Bodhi, Puppy, anybody else got any ideas?
Peppermint.
Let me know. Yeah. So I tried Peppermint in the past. Again, great for crappy hardware. I haven't really got crappy hardware to test it on.
Yeah.
Garuda.
Yeah, you've been on at me about Garuda for a while, haven't you? Maybe I should actually.
But you said
Maybe
no
I
Arch.
Yeah, well,
and I have mentioned Blend OS a number of times, but that's ours.
oh yeah, I tried Blend OS. It was just it was fine. I just found it a little bit slow, actually. But I did have that. I remember I tried Blend OS around the time because I was checking out all of Rudra's projects, and I remember getting Ubuntu Unity and Blend OS and.
So Garuda's great if you're the kind of person that puts a bunch of LED lights up in his bedroom.
Well, yeah, that's the one thing. Yeah, many people have not many people have said that I'm a fashionable or tasteful person, but even Garuda seems a little bit blingy, even for me. Do you know what I mean?
It is, boy, it is.
Yeah. Although one of my sons is getting interested in the idea of Linux, so maybe and he's a bit blingy, so maybe I could use that as an excuse.
Till he wants to play Fortnite on it, and then he's bollocksed.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't play Fortnite anymore, actually.
Oh, how grew that?
Well, no, I think because he hit 18, really. He kind of grew up.
Your voice keeps getting quieter, Bill.
That's because your hearing just keeps getting worse.
Or Majid keeps getting louder.
That it's quite possible that I'm getting louder. Sorry. Anywho, I suppose I'm not even halfway through. So my tour of the different streaming services continues as I basically try and save money by taking everybody's free trials. And so I'm back on. Well, not back. I'm now moved over from. So I'd started off on Tidal. So I was on Spotify originally. I went over to Tidal. Then from Tidal I went to Deezer, and now I've gone to Apple Music because it turns out I had 2 months free from some offer which I didn't know anything about. So I got Apple Music, and it's not exactly what you would call a user-friendly interface. I mean, everybody that keeps talking about how the UX design on Apple devices is whatever. It's like, no. I mean, it's fine. I mean, it's reasonably good quality and it does lossless apparently, and all that sort of stuff. But it's not the best app in the world, I must say. And it seems a little bit pretentious because it keeps kind of pushing its signature DJs towards you. I mean, I suppose newsflash, Apple being pretentious. Okay, should have known better. But hey, it's free.
I think that's the people that use Apple being pretentious. Anyway, no, I didn't say that.
Yeah, well, that works as well. But yeah, hey, it's free and it's for 2 months, and then I'm sure I'll move over. I'm quite happy that I found these kind of services that allow me to transfer my playlists from one to the other, because it's just made the whole thing so much easier. The 63 playlists that I didn't know I'd made, I've been able to just transport them all around the different streaming services. Maybe I might actually do a review of all of them once I've been around them all. I mean, what's left that I haven't tried? I haven't tried Cobuzz. The one thing, oh yeah, so Apple Music makes a big thing about its the fact that it's got lossless audio. Tidal, as you might remember, is one of these again which has very high bit rate things, quality FLACs. Amazon Music does for some of its tracks. Deezer does as well if you have the correct tier. Spotify famously doesn't. A hi-fi, high-res audio option from Spotify has been in the works for about 5 years and hasn't happened. And I can't see it happening anytime soon because there's no real incentive for them to do it. But one of the things it did make me something I did kind of know already, but when you've actually got stuff which is all allegedly the same quality, is that your headphones make more of a difference than the codecs that you use on Bluetooth. We all know that if it's Bluetooth, it's going to be some compression. It's not going to be the same as if you've got a DAC and a 3.5 mil jack and doing it, the analog way. And this has been a discussion on one of our innards a couple of months ago. But I did always kind of think that, because I did used to hear the difference if I used better, if I was using devices which had higher res codec support, whether that be aptX, whether that be LDAC, whether that be SSD HDC. I think that's the one that Samsung have. And actually, I think the quality of the headphones itself, even Bluetooth ones, is more important. The reason I say this is because I have a couple. Again, as we've mentioned before in Inners before, I've got a whole bunch of different earbuds, and I've got some Samsung ones. I've got some Nothing ones. I've got some Sennheisers. I've got some a whole variety of other ones. These are Bluetooth ones I'm talking about. They all support some kind of high-res codec, but a different one. So Nothing has LDAC, Sennheiser's has aptX, the Galaxy Buds FE has an SSD-C one. And I could notice significant differences between the different headphones. And I've come to the conclusion that it's the headphone itself. As I said, that might not be some kind of massive surprise. Joe might be sitting there going, look at this noob, yeah. What does he know? But I think it just made me... Eric has often talked about how, earbuds have got good, cheap earbuds have got good, and good earbuds have got cheap. And that is true. But there is still, when you start getting this slightly more expensive headphones, there is an increase in quality, which I'm assuming is down to this construction of the drivers and all the other things that, the hardware, basically. I suppose you could kind of put it... Yeah, I suppose you could put this as... Yeah, and all this kind of stuff. And now there is a discussion about, should you be spending £250 on earbuds when you can get £50 ones? And are they necessarily 5 times better? No, they're probably not. But as I said, because I've been using all sorts of different files and different services and all that, I am starting to kind of get a bit of a more nuanced idea of what I like the sound of and what I like the sound of things for. So, for example, if I'm listening to my normal kind of heavy metal music, I prefer the Sennheisers or the Earphone. If I want to listen to podcasts, I might prefer the Nothing ones, etc., etc. Samsung DeX has been one of these things which I really like, but I'm struggling now to find a use for. And so I was actually going to throw this question out to Joe and Bill slightly, because I know you guys have both got Samsung devices as well, and you both guys, you use DeX. What kind of use cases do you use it for? Because I'm just trying to think what else I can use it for. Because I have a feeling I'm underutilizing it at the minute.
My use case is not going to be helpful for you
Mm-hmm.
because I use it at work when I'm
Okay.
sitting in one spot. You understand
Okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm at a desk. I'm using it because I'm not allowed to bring in another computer other than my work computer, and then I'm not
Mm-hmm.
allowed to do my own stuff on my work computer.
Mm-hmm.
So I have that set up so that I can view full-size web pages in a more natural way. You know, get
Mm-hmm.
the full desktop experience with that, access my Proxmox, access my VMs, and things like that on a larger screen. And I also do some like I'll type my show notes if I get
Mm-hmm.
free time at work. I'll do that there, and it's better on Dex than it is just on the phone itself.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know that that would help you any.
No,
Well,
no, it's an idea. Go ahead, Bill.
in my case, I mean, yeah, it's at work too, but what I hook it to my TV that I've got in the truck, and
Mm-hmm.
because when I'm on the road, I want to be able to watch my Netflix. I want to be able to watch my Jellyfin server back home and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And there are ways to just like hook up an Android phone to a TV and then just kind of watch it through the HDMI without
Mm-hmm.
any sort of abstraction in between.
Mm-hmm.
But it never seems to work all that well. With Dex, it just works as though it's native.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's the resolution.
Yeah.
Like when you're just using a regular Android phone and you have it hooked up to HDMI, it's screen mirroring.
Yeah.
Right.
So you never get that resolution just right on the second device. So with Dex, it will do its own screen resolution and work correctly.
And well, you've got a laptop, desktop style desktop in front of you on the TV, and when you run your apps, they behave correctly because somebody has done the work to make sure that the right calls are being made and stuff actually renders itself correctly. And so you get a much better, much more cohesive experience no matter what. And of course, some apps are better than others too.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, it's a better experience than just trying to run it with the screen mirroring like Joe was describing. And
Do you have a particular Bluetooth keyboard mouse combination, or do you have like one with a trackpad, or?
I use a GK61
Okay.
for my keyboard, which is just a mechanical keyboard that does Bluetooth wire, or well, it does 3 different Bluetooths and a wired connection, so I can have it set up to do multiple devices and just hit a button and it'll switch between them. And then I'll do the same thing with like a Jellycomb mouse.
Okay.
And then just switch between my computers because it has the 2.4 gigahertz dongle, or it has 2 different Bluetooth connections. So I just once again have to click a button and I'm switching devices.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
yeah,
All right. I'll think of those.
in theory, so I've got 2 ways I can hook the device up to the TV. If all I'm going to do is watch TV, then I will just hook it with this. I bought 2 of these cables. It's HDMI on one end and USB-C on the other. And I think there's probably like a little ARM chip in there that does some of the intermediary type stuff. But that's if all I'm going to do is watch TV, and then I'll use the screen on the phone as like the control to start the app and that. If I'm going to do anything else, I've got one of these, what's that name brand? Starts Anchor.
Yeah.
There's a hub I've got that like hooks up to the phone with the USB-C, and then I've got an HDMI out to go to the TV, but then I've got a whole bunch of USB and USB-C jacks that I can run either, anything, the keyboards and the mouse. And in theory, you can use anything. And I wish I'd have known this question was coming because I've got a couple of these little I don't even know how to describe the shape of these things, but they're almost the shape of a Xbox game controller, but they're a full keyboard with a
Oh
little
yeah. I've seen
with a little
these. Yeah,
trackpad mouse at the top.
yeah,
The
yeah.
arcades, yeah.
Yeah, and that works really well if I'm just wanting to do some quick little work, you know.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you use that hub, I mean, the cool thing is you could literally plug in all the same stuff you're used to working with on your as long as you've got a way to charge that phone at the same time, which with the hub you do if you got it plugged into power. If you got the hub plugged into power, that is.
Okay.
So I mean,
Interesting stuff.
and you really notice when you've got a good device too. Of course, Dex really only comes with the better devices, but you can tell because these phones actually behave really well, surprisingly well for what you're asking it to do. Because if you're running a web browser and you're watching Netflix and you're browsing the web and that you're getting a full experience on there, and you could forget real easily that you're on a mobile device, you know. So
Yeah, and like my phone, the S24 Ultra, I just use it essentially as a second screen with the decks. So like I can do either phone calls or some a scrolling app like Facebook or whatever on the phone, and then everything else that I'm actually working on the deck screen. So.
It's a shame that a lot of the other manufacturers don't really prioritize a desktop mode in the same way. I mean, I know Motorola have got a ready for, but I mean, half the time, a lot of Android phones won't even have video out through the USB.
It's very
Which is-
niche.
Yeah, it is niche, but I was looking at Antutu scores because I was bored. And one of the things that I found, I can't remember if it was Antutu or Geekbench, but they had a reference device, to reference, the different benchmarking that they were doing the different phones to. And that was a Core i7 12th gen. And the number of phones which went way past that made me think to myself, bloody hell, these things are so powerful. Now we should be able to do more. And if I can do more, maybe I should do more. But that's more of a philosophical kind of musing, which I will leave because my wanderings are going on a bit. TV wise, I enjoyed Invincible, one of the best shows on streaming, I think. Surprising.
I couldn't watch it toward the end of the first season and into the second. It just
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean,
It
you have to manage violence, and
I
the violence
can't.
is a bit
Not at that level.
much. No,
I
but
watch
at
a
the
lot
same,
of cartoon violence, but that is not cartoon violence. That actually disturbs me more than The Boys.
that's a statement and a half. Okay, Reacher is good fun. It's not exactly what you'd call highbrow, but it's good fun. I really enjoyed Paradise on Disney Plus. I'd heard people talk about that it was really good and all that sort of thing, and so I watched the first episode, and I was kind of like, this president gets killed, and nobody, people are then figuring it out, and then it has a massive twist, which I'm not going to tell, and then suddenly I was hooked, and I think I got through the whole series in 2 or 3 days. And one of the episodes near the end, the penultimate one, was genuinely one of the most scary and anxiety-inducing pieces of television, in a good way, I'm saying, that I'd ever seen. And it was just, I enjoyed it. There are some narrative problems, but hey. The new Daredevil has come, and maybe Disney won't turn everything to shit, because this actually seems to be reasonably good. Let's see if it continues. There's another one on Disney called 1,000 Blows, which is made by the maker of Peaky Blinders, which I've started watching, and basically it's looking at bare knuckle fighting in Victorian London. So that's on my list of things to watch. And because as part of that Apple Music thing, I've got free Apple TV as well for a bit. I've been watching Silo, which is good, but it isn't half slow. Apple TV does like to make slow. I mean, there's slow burn and there's slow. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, their first season of Foundation actually only covered 80 pages of the book.
Oh, I know. I mean, I did like it though. I did like
They
Foundation.
added a lot of stuff to it, but it still only covered 80 pages of the book. Yeah.
Just a little thing to mention about work. And this is something that I've noticed over the last year or so. The NHS obviously took a big hit with COVID. It was already a under-resourced and overstretched service, and then we had a global pandemic. And it broke a lot of people. Staff recruitment, retention is rubbish. And
Well,
so
the Tories had a lot to do with that, cutting funding all over the place.
True. It was not the political side I was going to go on. I've noticed that now people have been waiting an obscenely long time to have their operation. We had a poor woman who came for her hip replacement. It was 4 years that she'd been waiting. We've got kids who've been waiting over a year for relatively minor operations. And the new government is apparently throwing money to try and sort this out. I've not seen any changes yet. What I have noticed is that patients know that there is very long waits, and they have started to manipulate things to try and get themselves done quicker, which I can see it from their point of view. But so, for example, people will hide the fact that they've got heart problems. People will hide the fact that they've had a recent chest infection, things which might delay their procedure. And then you go ahead and do the procedure and you end up in problems. And then you find out, oh, I didn't tell you. I meant to tell you. It's okay. It's making work slightly more challenging, because now you really kind of sat there thinking, are you telling me the truth or not? And I do understand people have been waiting for a long time. And I don't know, even in one sense, you can say, why am I even mentioning this on a Linux podcast? I don't know. I just needed to vent it out to someone, really, which is that how have we got into this situation where people are feeling that they're having to, if not lie, at least be economical with the truth, because they're having to wait so long for their operations. And I don't know. I just felt like I had to kind of just air that to somebody before it ate me up inside. So on that fantastically positive note, I suppose we should say goodbye to my wanderings and go on to the Linux Innards. So in the Linux Innards, we were going to have a freeform discussion about media streaming. Now, I sometimes wonder whether in 2025, I remember what year we're in, media streaming is the same beast that it was when a lot of us old fogies got into media on computers. When in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, it was all about downloading from peer to peer and burning ripping your legally obtained DVDs and whatever, having your own collection, having a Plex server and whatever. And then over the last 10 years, we've seen this explosion of streaming services: Netflix, BBC iPlayer, Amazon Prime. And I sometimes wonder whether some of the kind of discussions that we have and some of the kind of paradigms that we use when we're discussing these are even relevant. So, for example, all the discussions I've been saying about Plex, for example, that might be important to me, but is that important to everybody?
Let me interject there, because I know that shift that you're talking about. Torrenting illegally used to be a major thing because cable sucked and people hated it. Then you had the advent of Netflix, essentially, and maybe one or two other small services that provided something similar. And torrenting basically fell off. because people had one service that was affordable that they could go to and get their content that they wanted. And the backlog on Netflix was one of the greatest things ever at the time because everybody was dumping their stuff there because nobody had their own service. But if you look at recent numbers, torrenting has taken off again.
Yes,
because everyone now has their own streaming service and only their stuff is on it. And each one costs enough that if you get them all, it's even more than cable was.
Yeah.
Especially
Very
if you
true.
don't want ads. So torrenting is there, and the means of getting your own stuff and putting it onto your screens is still important. Or even if you do buy the CDs and DVDs, you still want to rip them and be able to access them from anywhere. So yeah, I would say that all of these different self-hosted things are becoming relevant again, specifically because of the, once again, shift in the market towards people wanting lower cost and finding it their own way.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got a good point there in that because there's now every Tom, Dick, and Abdullah has got his own streaming service, and some of them you might want to watch. Say, so for example, Foundation. You might really want to watch Foundation, but you don't really want to pay for Apple because you haven't got any Apple devices, as an example. So you're going to look at other avenues of obtaining that. So in this kind of place where we are at the minute, would you say we're in a more of a kind of a hybrid situation when it comes to media and media consumption? You know, are we kind of, are we looking for a kind of, I mean, I know, for example, on Plex, you can link your Netflix and your Amazon Prime and things to it. So you've got your, one-stop box. You've got, if you use something like Kodi, and what used to be known as XBMC, whether you're running that on a Raspberry Pi or, LibreLec, or whether you're using it as an app, is, you have a kind of one-stop shop which everything kind of plugs into.
Well,
Is that
it's
something that
it's interesting because things show up on my Jellyfin for two reasons. One, a friend asks for it. That's probably the number one reason. Or two, it's something I saw somewhere else and I want to have it myself. And so it'll show up on the Jellyfin for that reason, But is there a one-stop shop? I've got an NVIDIA Shield, which for Android is probably the highest. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong, but it's probably your most premium device for Android TV.
Well, it was when it came out, definitely,
and it's still getting.
It probably still might well be, actually, because
I think it is because it's still getting updates. Yeah.
I mean, actually, it's interesting because, I mean, slight tangent. I was actually listening to a podcast today which was talking about how Google has dropped support now for the original Chromecast and the second generation one. And he's trying to move everybody over to their new Google TV streamer box, which is basically a Chromecast but rebranded and now double the price.
Yeah.
But I digress. But yes, you're right. I mean, the NVIDIA, there's a remarkable number of people who still use NVIDIA Shields, even though, if I remember correctly, it came out 2015. I think it came out.
Yeah, that is
a decade.
That is fair because you're right, and it will still outperform the new devices that Google TV is coming out with because they're just not high-powered devices, whereas the NVIDIA Shield is. It's a proper, well, it's $200 for one of these things, and you get what you pay for, because I've also got a lot of Fire Stick type devices, which are a similar experience in theory. But in practice, they're not even close just because of the performance of the hardware itself. And Android is one of those things that you don't notice all the problems that are inherent to Android in itself just because the device is so powerful. It just kind of wades through it, And that's the case with the NVIDIA Shield. NVIDIA Shield gives you a completely Android native experience. There's no branding on top of that other than the stuff that Google has kind of added to Android TV over the years. And so you do get some like they're pushing certain platforms and shows and stuff like that. Opinions abound about that, but you've got access to all of the you got Kodi. You can get Kodi without jumping through hoops. You can get Jellyfin without jumping through hoops. You can get everything, you know. Whereas with Fire TV,
Modjet can't get Jellyfin without
Well,
jumping through hoops, but
I'm talking about the I'm talking about the client. I'm not talking about the server. I'm talking about the client.
Yeah, I mean, is that actually a recognition that you don't necessarily need all that power? That you that you could
as somebody that uses Fire TV.
The only reason I'm saying is because the only reason I'm saying is not so much on the Fire TV. I'm thinking about Chromecast in that sense, because the way that Chromecast worked was very much like the heavy lifting is done somewhere else, and this is just a cast protocol that you can then get it to come onto your screen, and so you therefore didn't necessarily need a particularly powerful Android box.
Chromecast
to do it. And in fact, I mean, you could even argue. I mean, one of the first times I ever had a media streaming box was actually a Raspberry Pi 2 with Libra Elec and Kodi. So you don't necessarily need a huge amount of power. I don't disagree with what you're saying, by the way. I mean, it is a very good device. What the NVIDIA Shield. But I'm just saying whether the market kind of saw that wasn't where the money was.
I think Bill's point is that the higher powered device provides a better experience than the other things. Like me personally, the closest thing I come to that is a Roku TV. And you can put all the apps on that. But with the NVIDIA Shield, I mean, you could also turn that into an emulation station, which was one of its selling points when it first came out. And it's still very valid now, and that you could hook a controller up to it and do all of your retro gaming on there with little to no effort.
Yeah. And it just runs. I mean, it's 64-bit too. That's the other thing. I think a lot of your Fire TV and some of your Rokus and that are 32-bit systems. There is a clunkiness. There's a chugginess to some of the lower cost, and they're way lower cost. I mean, you're talking the difference between like a Fire Stick and what are Fire Sticks going for now? $45, $50. You know,
30, 40 quid. So about that much. Yeah.
As opposed to $200. It's really hard to justify $200 for an Android TV experience. You know, other than the fact that it is just a better, more performant experience. Because and
Android gets more updates than something like a Roku does.
And you're getting a more native Android experience on there, and you've got access to all the apps. Because Fire TV, because I've got Fire TV on 3 TVs in the house, just because those I got a 55-inch upstairs in our second living room upstairs, and that's got the Fire TV built into it, because at one time I thought that was a great idea. And then our TV in the bedroom, and then my daughter's bedroom also has Fire TV built in, and it's fine. It's fine. But
the newest Fire TV stick is $39.99.
Yeah,
they also have a light for $29.99.
And you are getting that difference in experience.
It's much more limited.
You've got to jump through. If you want Kodi, for example, you have got to jump through some pretty serious hoops. You've got to install a file downloader to go to Kodi's website and actually get the binary and then download the APK and download that and install it, because you're limited to what's in the
Amazon App Store.
Yeah, the Amazon App Store.
Yeah, I mean, actually, just circling back slightly, I found Roku sticks were really good if you didn't want to do anything else. So, it was the kind of thing that you'd buy for your mom or something, and collect it up, and it's like that's it. But the minute you wanted to do anything, it would fall off. It would
Now,
fall
see,
over.
that's interesting you bring that up because I think the Fire Sticks work best if you stay in the Amazon Prime.
Ecosystem.
If you stay within Prime
Yeah,
and then you add all of your
that's definitely
additional
true.
stuff. You don't get separate apps because it will run separate apps. Like if you want your Paramount Plus and your other stuff. But where it works best is if you do that thing where Prime adds all of these subscriptions onto the Prime, which this gets confusing because you can either get a separate account for these things. Or
Yeah,
you
you
add
kind
it
of
onto
you've got it
Prime.
through them, isn't it? Yeah,
Right, and
yeah.
that's where Fire Stick kind of works best because you're already running Prime, which is built into Fire Stick. But if you certain things, if you want to go and do and go searching or whatever, you actually have to like start the Amazon Prime app, which is listed as a separate thing, but yet it's running on Prime, so it's.
I mean, I found yes, you have to jump through some hoops for getting different apps onto a Fire Stick, but that's still it wasn't the most at least for techies, it wasn't the most complicated thing to do. I could never get any extra apps side-loaded, as it were, on Roku sticks. Maybe I'm just being an idiot.
I've never had
but
one
I
of
could
those. I don't know.
I could just. I mean, I wasn't even 100% sure they even ran Android, to be completely honest. I mean, they may do, but I just didn't know. You're right about Fire Sticks. You are right, and it does get complicated because they want you to use them as their. See, this is my point about a one-stop shop, because I think Amazon want you to use your Fire TV and the Prime app that's on there as your one-stop aggregator, and have your other subscriptions linked to it. Your Paramounts, or your Hulus, and things like that. I don't know if that necessarily does work very well, because at least for me anyway, all of my services are siloed off. I've got a separate Netflix app, I've got a separate BBC Player app, I've got a Prime Video app. I mean, I've only got the Fire Stick on the secondary TV that's in our room, which never seems to ever get used. I don't know why. Because I actually preferred the Chromecast. I actually got used to that the Chromecast way of doing things, of opening it up on my phone and then pressing the cast thing and then it coming up.
Chromecast is interesting because I would have thought that concept would have done better than it did.
Oh, I think it has. I mean, again, so the podcast I was listening to today, where we was talking about this, was 9 to 5 Google, and they were talking about how cast has become a verb. People cast stuff. In the same way that people airdrop, or things like that, and when you have become, or or how Google became a verb, I'll Google it. Nobody bings it, does they?
Unless you're on
be
Big Bang Theory.
Yeah. And who duck goes it? You know what I mean? I mean, I might, but actually, so I actually think that. I mean, and as I said, this was an Android podcast. You might say that it might be a bit more, effusive about Android stuff and Google stuff than other people. But I did think that was interesting. And I thought, you know what? Actually, there is a point. People do just cast things, whether it's actually a Chromecast or not.
I thought about that, and I thought, because my oldest boy. Okay, so when a Chromecast come out, I thought, okay, this is perfect, because I'm picturing in my head the people that this is getting marketed to is somebody that's like standing on, living in the metropolitan area, whatever, and they're watching something on their phone, and they get on the train to go home or whatever at the end of their work day, and they're watching it on the train. They want to finish it on their TV when they get home, but, going through that whole mundane process of opening the app on the TV, whatever, just like cast it off to the TV when they get home from the device they were already watching it on.
I'm pretty sure Roku has that built in.
Yeah,
most of your systems probably do.
So my oldest son is like the embodiment of all of that stereotype that I just described right there. He lives in a metropolitan area, and he lives the very metropolitan life. And I brought this up to him, and he's like, no, it just isn't a thing. They just people
Okay,
just
interesting.
he really didn't have a good reason why it wasn't a thing. It just wasn't. It's just not something, or at least in his case, I should say.
Because people with giant TVs these days will still continue watching things on their phone.
He sits
in their
down with
hand.
his giant TV in front of him off and continues to watch the thing on his 7-inch screen.
Okay, so I might be guilty of this as well. So interestingly, so what I was saying about the second TV. So I bought a second TV for our bedroom around the time of COVID, and I mean it was a cheap TV, but it was good. It was JVC, 42 inches, and all that. And I've never really been one of these people that goes for smart TVs because I think I don't like the smart TV kind of interface is always a bit crap. I'm sorry, whether it's Samsung's or LG's or whatever. LG's wasn't too bad, to be fair. But I mean, yeah. So I've always kind of, first thing I've done is got either a Fire Stick, a Roku, or hooked up a Raspberry Pi, whatever it might be. So this one has a Fire Stick that's attached to it. And, once in a while, me and my wife would be like, oh, should we watch something that we don't want to watch in the main room, maybe something, just we're watching late at night, so we can watch it in our bedroom. This quality of the screen that we've got on my Galaxy Tab or my Lenovo laptop is so much better than that big TV, even though it's technically a 1080p 42-inch JVC and all that sort of stuff, that actually we prefer to watch it because at the end of the day, it's about how much of your vision is being used up, isn't it? And if, for example, if you're sitting quite close to your laptop or quite close to your phone or whatever, like this, I know audio podcast, man show stuff on camera, but it's still using up the same amount of your vision. Do you understand what I mean? And as I said, the screens are so good nowadays, and I think that TV screens, in a sense, have kind of lagged a little bit because, again, good stuff has got cheap and cheap stuff has got good, but it still has issues. Recently there was the Cricket Champions Trophy. India were in the final. India won, by the way. Yay. Anyway, watching it on the big TV, there was so many reflections, there was so much this, that, and the other, that at a certain point I was like, damn, can't I just watch this in bed on my tablet? And then I thought to myself, what the hell, man? I've got to... Anyway, so I think we've kind of moved away from necessarily watching stuff on big TV screens. My eldest, who's 20, be 21 soon, bloody hell, he has watched all of Breaking Bad on his Pixel 7. And now he's on to Better Call Saul.
Good phone.
And it is a good phone and it is a good screen and all that, but I was like, dude, you've got a proper computer in your room and you've got a PS5. Why don't you just watch it on that? Nah, I prefer to watch it on this. Okay, sorry. Tangent over about these young people and their screens. Yeah, but so as you were saying, so you would have thought that your son would be using the cast thing a lot more and stuff like that, but he's not. I don't know. I mean, I found, for example, maybe it's because I was early on to it. I got the original Chromecast quite early on. I got used to that. I like the control of that because at the end of the day, you still have your phone with you. Half the time, your phone's next to you while you're watching something anyway, and you're trying not to doom scroll because you're trying to watch TV. And so the idea of being on that, and then that's the main way of me watching YouTube, actually, casting to my TV often. The only problem with that is I can't do Brave, and therefore I get stuck with the ads. But anyway,
that's another cool thing about the NVIDIA Shield is it's got Chromecast built right in, so it shows up as an available Chromecast device when you're going and looking. And
because for a long time the Amazon Fire Sticks you couldn't cast to them because Amazon and Google weren't getting along. Well, they never got along.
I still don't think it's a reliable experience.
It works a lot better than it used to. I mean, it basically didn't work at all before.
Yeah.
it's a lot better than it was.
Some stuff just casts better than other things. You can almost tell the things that work better than others, and some things will only work if they're casted from some kind of Chrome or Chromium type browser or whatever. I've noticed.
Oh, what a surprise, eh?
Yeah.
Back to that whole, it's
Well,
like full circle on this, isn't it? We're going all the way back.
I mean,
to,
honestly, you
Mozilla.
expect these companies to kind of behave that way. And I don't really fault them too much because, there's not much incentive for these companies to go out of their way to test these things or to spend a lot of development resources to make it work unless, they're getting something out of it.
So what things have you got on your NVIDIA Shield that you use for media streaming?
Oh my God. Okay. Okay. Netflix, Prime, Hulu, Paramount Plus.
So these are all these are all as separate apps, yeah?
Yes.
Not as a kind of one-stop shop type of thing.
I don't have anything bolted onto Prime whatsoever.
Okay.
They're all separate things, and it's mostly because of the fact that I have to be able to access all of these services from different types of devices. Because while that might work on a Fire Stick to have it bolted onto Prime, it might not necessarily work that way on like the phones or the NVIDIA Shield or whatnot. Mm-hmm. And Paramount Plus, Hulu. What did I?
You said Jellyfin.
Jellyfin.
So Jellyfin is the stuff that you have legally downloaded, yeah? Linux ISOs.
So legally, let's go with legally. Legally is in I didn't steal any of the equipment that I used to download the content.
Just stop, Bill. Just stop. Okay, just stick with it, man. I'm trying to save you here.
I shouldn't have brought it up.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, but the point I'm trying to say is that it's actual like media files.
Yeah, and I should point out the difference. So that on those devices, I've got the clients installed. There's also, if you're wanting to get into Jellyfin, that is a whole world of content.
That could be an innards of itself.
Oh, it certainly could.
What's the TLDR?
Okay, the TLDR is that the server is running on this black box behind me where all of the files sit, and then that is being served to the internet where every device in the world can connect to it one way or the other. Please don't DDoS my server. If you have an account. And all you need to have an account is, number one, be my friend, and number two, ask. And
so what is the... I mean, I'm just saying this just for, out of sake of completeness, because we're on the topic.
Yeah.
What is the difference between that and Plex?
Not much. Oh,
you want me to cover that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, go on,
Plex.
Joe. Go ahead.
Okay, the difference between Plex and Jellyfin is what Plex used to be. Okay, Plex reaches out to another server for you to be logged into it and using it. So it goes out to Plex.tv. So they have all of your information. Jellyfin is isolated. It is standalone. It is on its own. But it essentially does the same thing without the services that Plex provides. Plex provides its own streaming services. It has deals with other streaming places, and it will provide those things for you. They are planning on having a rental service on Plex where you can, rent certain films or TV shows or whatever. But for right now, they do have a live TV section. They do have something where you can go and get different TV shows that they have available. And then they do have timings. It kind of reminds me of Sony's old streaming service that they have. What was it called? Oh, I should know it. It's probably still there too, but it doesn't matter. So they do provide more than just your media to you and others. But it reaches out to their servers, and that's where people are having a lot of problems, because eventually they could come back and start cracking down on illegal sharing of files.
But isn't that kind of the whole point of Plex? So,
It's not supposed to be. I mean, otherwise there would be a crackdown on it since they're a commercial service. The whole point of it is if you have legal files, then you can share them to yourself. But there is some interesting tidbits of law about you then rebroadcasting that to other people, even if you do own the media. Now, they can't prove whether you do or do not own a media that you're sharing with yourself, but they can say that you're not allowed to share that with so-and-so in Tennessee.
Okay.
Whereas with Jellyfin,
Whereas,
yeah, I'm sharing a file that's sitting on my server. For example, in an extreme hypothetical, let's say I wanted to put I don't know, let's make up a show, MASH on my Jellyfin server, and I want to share it to, I don't know, somebody like Moss wants to watch MASH, and I say, okay, I can put that on my Jellyfin. It's just there, and he can access it. And Jellyfin, as a company, as an entity, whatever you want to call them, they have no reason to give a flying whatever where that file came from, because it is just an MP4 or an MKV file sitting on a server somewhere. That is,
and they have no access to it.
They really have no access to it, and they have no mechanism by which to even collect any metrics that I'm aware of that are relevant to what files are sitting where. I think I contribute some metrics voluntarily as to, like, certain mechanical processes that help
And
with the project.
My understanding is that getting GPU integration for transcoding is a bit more difficult on Jellyfin because you're doing it yourself than it is on Plex, where you're basically it's mostly built in. Sometimes you have to jump through some extra hoops.
It's gotten
but
better.
Just in general, it works.
It's gotten better. What you have to do, like in my case, I'm running Jellyfin in a Docker container, and so with the Docker container, it used to be you had to specify the actual, because on Linux everything is a file. But now all you have to do is mount the /sys/drv or whatever it is folder within the Docker container, or bind it within the Docker container, which means that container has access to all of the hardware that it needs to access to do hardware encoding. And then from if you're the one running the server, or if you're the one that has administrative access to that server, you can access the administrative panel, and then you can activate the hardware encoding. But then you also have to know, okay, this device has an NVIDIA video card or whatever, so I'm going to use the NVENC method of hardware encoding. So you activate that. In my case, I've got the server it's running on is a Xeon processor, so it's got the QuickSync. So the thing that we use on there is the QSV hardware encoding. So I activate all that. So you give the this is all way off in the distance, but you give the Docker container access to the hardware, and then in the administrative panel you tell it that, yeah, I want hardware encoding, and then I want it to use QuickSync, which is it's a method by which Intel GPUs can do hardware encoding. And
so I think that's a very good way of actually kind of showing why you would use Jellyfin over Plex, actually, in the way that both of you have described it, which I think is quite useful and helpful. Actually, it's starting to make me think maybe I should have persisted with Jellyfin a bit more. Honest, I don't know if this is the case over in the States, but over here, there's been a real proliferation of what they call IPTV. services. Now, the way that someone explained that to me was that these are basically people's Plex servers that they're selling access to. Is that a fair characterization, or is that wrong?
I think that would be wrong. Now, I haven't seen a whole lot of what you would call IPTVs, but I'm pretty sure that's more like there's an application, Hypnotics. Hypnotics would be IPTV. So that's live streaming of television stations that are they're broadcast locally. Someone takes that broadcast and then gives it an IP, puts it on the internet, streaming. So,
Which is not typical of American broadcasting channels, by the way.
Yeah, I think that's what they mean by the proliferation of IPTV, but I could be wrong.
Because I remember a couple of years ago, there was a big thing in this country about Cody boxes and dodgy Cody boxes, which had links to all sorts of things, and you could watch all sorts of stuff for free. And then there was a big crackdown on that, and now IPTV.
They tried to say that Cody was specifically for the illegal watching.
They were not. They took a bad rap for that. What was actually happening was Cody being an open source project. Mm-hmm. The plugins, and Kodi is very much you can add all these plugins to it to get all this extra functionality, and there was you can actually even add repositories to it, and there was one repository.
I remember trying this out.
One repository in particular called super repos or something like that, where and it was using the P2P type protocols, and that basically the same protocols that you would use to download something from, like, say, I don't know, Pirate Bay. I don't know. I've only heard of these things. I don't know much about them. The same sort of protocols. Except
Bill sold his stock in the Pirate Bay last year.
You instead of downloading, though, a lot of these repositories were like offering. I mean, you had an interface hooked into Kodi where you could just sit there and watch these movies, and it was crap. I mean, a lot of it was really good. It was the same garbage you would get if you downloaded movies that were like in cam format, where somebody took their iPhone into the movie theater and downloaded it, except you were just watching it instead of downloading it, which was more palatable for people that didn't really necessarily
didn't have a whole lot of space on their computers.
Yeah, there you go. But I think that kind of thing gets unfairly lumped in with IPTV, and IPTV has never really taken off in the States, unnecessarily or unfortunately, because what I'd really like to see is each individual local channel to have an app or some kind of way to connect to it over internet protocol to watch the programming. Unfortunately, the problem in the United States is getting the licensing to do that kind of.
That link that you shared, it literally looks exactly like Hypnotics.
Oh, IPTVs. Okay, yeah. I mean, and for those that don't know, Linux Mint has an app called Hypnotics, which gives you enough stuff to watch to really.
So you get that player, but then you have to then have a service like the other one that I've shared in our chat, and if you then pay them, they give you some login details, and then you've got all these channels and stuff. And I've heard that it's not 100% legal, and so I would never tell them to do it. But at the same time, it is because it has become a big thing in the UK. A lot of people use it for phones because you can always delete an app and if necessary. But I'm not entirely so. Basically, from what you're saying, it sounds like they're using the Hypnotics kind of open source bit and then plugging in some kind of broadcast TV to that.
you can put different links into Hypnotics as it is that will give you access to different sets of channels and things like that. I'm assuming that there are paid ones that you can get, and that's what you would be paying for with that application that you sent. But yeah, it looks like it is Hypnotics in a slightly different wrapper, and you're paying for different links, essentially.
My next,
and there seem to be quite a lot of. You see, when things are too good to be true, you think to yourself there must be something dodgy. When they say to you, we've got like 24,000 channels that you can watch for only £15 a month. You're like, okay, there's something dodgy going on here.
yeah.
I think the thing with the Kodi thing in the UK, just to kind of finish that point off, Kodi. So the problem was, as per usual, criminals aren't very clever. So it was the way that the boxes were being sold. If the boxes had been just sold as, look, this is a single board computer with Kodi pre-installed that you can connect up and you can do whatever you want with, that's perfectly legal and perfectly fine. But they were advertising it as a cheap way of getting Amazon and Netflix and this, that, and the other. You just pay me, and I'll fiddle. I'll fiddle with the box, and then give you the box, and that's how people got into trouble.
Well, people got into trouble, but how Kodi got into trouble was everybody blamed Kodi, even though it was the makers of the extensions that were the problem.
Yeah.
And Kodi had to go in and defend themselves, the makers of Kodi had to go in and defend themselves in court for it. And basically, things kind of died off after that. I don't remember exactly how it all ended, but I didn't see how you could...
Even the plugin operators, they were just providing access to a library of plugins that someone else was providing.
Yeah.
And nobody was literally providing a library of anything except plugins.
But again, it was the way that it was sold. At least the ones that the people in the UK that got into trouble were the fact that they were selling it as I can give you this box and you can see everything.
We bought all these Fire Sticks, we rooted them, and then we put Kodi on them. And then we put all these extensions on them so that you can watch all these things that you're not supposed to watch without paying for.
And I think that's the biggest reason why Kodi is not available. Like if you just buy a Fire Stick, and you can almost get anything from the Amazon App Store on there, Kodi is not one of the things you can get. You can even get Jellyfin on a Fire TV.
Yeah, you have to get the APK, and
you've got to get the APK and install
it. And interestingly, I've noticed, maybe it's just the distros that I was using at the time, but I remember 7-8 years ago, a lot of distros used to have Kodi pre-installed, and now I can't think of any off the top of my head. I mean, I don't know if that's just, again, the distros that I was using.
Kodi's still out there, but I can't think of anything that comes with it pre-installed.
LibreElec for Raspberry Pi.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had lots of fun with LibreElec, man.
That was my way of doing it back in the day.
Same here.
And I'd have
LibreElec does not come with Kodi. LibreElec is Kodi.
What? Oh, well, yes and no.
No, LibreElec is just enough of an OS to run Kodi. That was the way it worked.
And they add some elements to the Kodi user interface to where you can actually control the operating system from the Kodi interface. It's actually really slick. And
it was basically a very lightweight distro with one app.
Extremely lightweight. And it works really, really well. And here's pro tip, folks. If you want a really good Jellyfin experience, you've got the Jellyfin server going, and you don't want to use one of these TV experiences that we talked about. You want to use Raspberry Pi. One of the best Kodi plugins out there is the Jellyfin plugin for Kodi. It basically just gives Kodi direct access to your Jellyfin server, and it serves up all of your Jellyfin content on the Kodi interface, and it keeps it up to date. Now you have to install an add-on to Kodi and a plugin to your Jellyfin server, but that's almost trivial, to be honest with you, and it works really great. So, and like I was telling my wife not long ago, that if that NVIDIA Shield ever goes out, I'm not going to pay for another one of those. I'm just going to use the smart TV for the Netflix and the Paramount Plus and Hulu and crap like that, and then I'm going to put a jellyfin under it for the for all the or I'm going to put a Raspberry Pi under it for all the jellyfin stuff. On coding.
Well, on that pro tip bombshell,
Boom.
I think this has actually been a good discussion. Actually,
Yeah, it has.
Yeah, it has. I think we've covered quite a few topics. But I think we should now move on to Moss's favorite part of the show, which is
He's itching, corner. He's itching, isn't he?
Yeah, he needs to see a doctor about the itch.
I'm going to need to see a proctologist if the show goes on any longer.
Oh God, that was not a mental image I wanted, Moss. Thanks.
I don't know.
I've had my dinner already.
All righty. Well, in Bodhi Corner, there was a recent update of Moksha and all the themes. Thank you, Stefan. I am not going to go over all the changes, but instead note some of those changes that users and developers may notice or probably should know. Enlightenment config files have traditionally been stored in a hidden folder in the user's home directory, which is ~.e/e. For Bodhi 7 users, this has not changed, but what has changed is it added the environment variable e_user_home. In Bodhi Linux 7, e_user_home is set to the ~.e/e as above, but for future releases of Bodhi, we will be moving this location. In Bodhi Linux 8, Bodhi will be following free desktop standards and using xdg_config_home as they should, and xdg_config_home defaults to ~/.config. Hence, in later versions of Bodhi, e_user_home will be ~/.config/e. But as Moksha version 7 and earlier follow the XDG base directory specification, the user can change this location. For people who compile Moksha from source, this can be enabled or disabled. For now, if Moksha is compiled with the CFlags option, -DDoXDG, Moksha will have support for the xdg_config_home change mentioned above. If Moksha is compiled normally with the usual CFlags, it will not, and the econfig file will be in the usual ~.e/e. By default, in Bodhi, Moksha uses the moksha-menu package to determine how to display the application menu, but E17 and Enlightenment now have their own menu file, e-applications.menu. For Bodhi purposes, this menu is inadequate. For example, not displaying some installed applications anywhere in the menu. So in the distant past, Bodhi used the LXDE menu. When Jeff Hoagland forked E17 to create Moksha, he completely removed the eApplications menu file. However, to avoid an LXDE dependency and to better control what Wiley wanted displayed and how, he created Moksha-menu. For those that compile Moksha from source, what this meant was not only must one compile Moksha, one must also have Moksha-menu installed, set xdg_menu_prefix before the compile, or patch Moksha to use whatever menu file that you do have installed and wish to use. Failure to do so would mean whatever you first booted Moksha up, you would also have no menu at all under Applications. Clearly, this is less than ideal, but for our usage, it never mattered. We clearly know what to install and how to configure it so that Bodhi and Moksha work as expected. However, for any using Moksha on distros other than Bodhi, the above was some important information and not widely documented. The latest Moksha update changes all this some. For one thing, the eApplications.menu has been added back, the latest version in Enlightenment's Git repo. After all, any menu is better than no menu at all. And another CFlags option has been added to set an environment option to use while compiling Moksha to set the menu file in case you do not wish to use the e-applications menu. Specifically, if xdg_menu_prefix is set, that is the menu that will be used. Otherwise, the CFlags option -dmoksha_menu forces the use of a moksha-menu if xdg_menu_prefix is not set. If moksha_menu and both xdg_menu_prefix are not set, then the eApplications menu will be used. It's our hope that this will make things easier on all who use Moksha and no questions about why a menu is missing from those that compile Moksha from Git. Okay, now for the last change in Moksha I'm going to mention here, and this one is one many users will notice. When Jeff Hoagland forked E17 and created Moksha, he removed all the backgrounds that came with E17. I suppose he did not like them, so Moksha shipped with the default E17 theme background and the background of whatever theme we were using for that Bodhi release. The entire system's background in the wallpaper settings window is therefore empty, unless the user had installed one or more of the Moksha backgrounds from our repo. Robert has now restored the system's background folder with a few select E17 and E27 backgrounds, plus the E27 background from Raster's Flat Elm theme, and added it as well. He'll probably add a few more later. The backgrounds are very simple and may only appeal to a few, but adding these back does simplify packaging Moksha for the repos. Others who wish to use Moksha on their own distro are free to add whatever they wish here when they compile Moksha. The Wallscape module offers Bodhi Linux users an alternative method for setting desktop backgrounds featuring impressive animation effects. Initially an unfinished Enlightenment E17 module, the Bodhi team revived and renamed it to provide a more visually dynamic wallpaper experience. If you read the next issue of Full Circle magazine, there will be a couple of screenshots I took of the Wallscape module. Key features of Wallscape: animated backgrounds. Unlike the standard Moksha background module, Wallscape introduces animated effects, adding a dynamic aesthetic to your desktop. Simplified functionality. While it may not encompass all the features of the native background module, its straightforward design makes it user-friendly for those seeking basic wallpaper customization with added flair. Installing Wallscape. To enhance your desktop with Wallscape, you can install it directly from the Bodhi Linux App Center, or if you prefer, directly from terminal. Sudo apt update, sudo apt install moksha-module-wallscape. Using Wallscape is straightforward and intuitive. Located in your main menu, go into Settings, Modules, go to Look and activate the module. After that, it'll show up in your menus. More helpers for Bodhi are always needed. At present, Stefan is the only person working on themes, and while he does an excellent job, more could be done. Robert is the only one who can actually create the ISO. We have lots of excellent help on translations, but we may have missed some, and some translators may have moved on to other projects. I know the guy that does Portuguese for Bodhi also does Portuguese for 8 other distros, including Arch and Ubuntu. The Bodhi forum and Bodhi Discord are great places to find answers. The forum can be found at Bodhi Linux Forums with a link in the show notes. And of course, there's the Patreon account, link in the show notes. If you should wish to support Bodhi financially, a main benefit to joining the Patreon is access to more regular newsletters from Robert Wiley on what is happening. And that's what we got for this episode of Bodhi Corner.
Thank you very much, Moss.
Everyone can wake up now.
Moving on to vibrations from the ether, we've got nothing in here, and similarly, there is nothing in the check this out. Although I'm going to be checking out Bodhi, it sounds like. So
can I say something real quick? I'd like to put a shout out if anybody is interested in being a host on mintCast. Reach out to us, guys. We're gonna need some people, maybe 2 or 3 people, to help us out here. Reach out to us either on our Discord or email. Let us know. It's an easy way to get into the whole thing. It's how I got started, and I'm very, very, very thankful. And,
how I got started too.
I mean, we could really use the help. Not gonna lie to you, mintCast is a labor-intensive show.
Very time-intensive, yeah.
It is a commitment.
It is. But I think podcasting has become one of the most rewarding things in my life, and it is in no small part as a result of mintCast. So if you're interested...
I will state that other than Majid, we are a bunch of old white men, and if you're not old or white, it's appreciated. We want you here.
Yeah. I mean, we want anybody.
White men, but
I think we would take anybody
But
at this moment in time. But obviously,
not old white men, but we'd like to get as much diversity as possible.
we really
are not
would.
operated by the government, obviously.
It seems like the biggest roadblock with diversity is time zones. It feels like, because
Yeah.
we have had diversity in the past. We still do to a small degree, but
yeah,
time
it is 10
zones,
o'clock here in the UK at the minute. But
and
anyway.
and the UK is that's about as good as we can get, I suppose, right now. But at any rate, don't if you are middle-aged white cis male like most of us, then don't let that stop you. We love everybody here. We really do. But we really could use your help if you wanted to. I have a feeling I really screwed that up. But yeah, we could use your help. Reach out to us. Let us know if you'd like to.
Reach out.
So.
Reach out. Yeah.
Take
Okay
us out,
then.
Majid.
Okay then. So housekeeping and announcements. Thank you for listening to this episode of mintCast. See something that you think we should be talking about? Tell us. Send us an email at mintcast@mintcast.org. Join us live on YouTube. Post on the mintcast subreddit. Chat with us on Telegram and Discord. Discord's really the way to go, really, to be honest, on that one.
Kind of is.
Or you can post directly on mintcast.org. Our next episode will be 2 p.m. US Central Time, Sunday, March the 30th, 2025. And there's a link to get that converted to your time zone in the show notes. Next roundtable live stream, 2 p.m. US Central Time on Saturday, March 22nd, 2025. And there's a link to get that converted to your to your time zone in the show notes. Next roundtable live stream, 2 p.m. US Central Time on Saturday, April 5th, 2025. And there is a link to get that converted to your time zone also in the show notes. And live stream information is at mintcast.org/livestream. Wrapping up. Go ahead, Joe.
Well, if you like the sound of my voice, I'm on a couple of other podcasts on the Linux Link Tech Show. That's tllts.org. I'm on the Linux Lugcast, which is linuxlugcast.com. Our next movie that we're watching and reviewing is 99's Hackers. Or is that 96? I can't remember. You can email me directly, jb@mintcast.org, or you can buy me a coffee on Ko-fi. Moss?
Well, you can find me on Full Circle Weekly News every week. You can email me, moss@bodhilinux.com. My Mastodon is @zyvala@hosttux.social. You can occasionally hear me on HPR, Hacker Public Radio. And I'm getting a new article monthly in Full Circle Magazine. What about you, Bill?
Well, you can email me. I'm bill@mintcast.org. I'm Bill_H on Discord. At WCHauser3 at fostodon.org on Mastodon. Also, check out the other two podcasts I'm part of, Linux OTC and Three Fat Truckers. Links to both of those in the show notes. Majid?
So you can get hold of me on drmajid@mintcast.org. I'm on Mastodon at atypical_doctor at mastodon.social. I'm on Atypical Doctor on Instagram and Threads, and the Atypical Doctor podcast, link for that is in the show notes. And I'm also on Linux OTC with Bill and Eric. Eric unfortunately couldn't be with us today. We send him prayers and hope everything's going well with him. He can be reached by email at eric@mintcast.org. Before we leave, I want to make sure we acknowledge some of the people who make mintcast possible. Bill for our audio editing, hosting the server which runs our website maintenance, and the Nextcloud server on which we host our show notes and raw audio. Archive.org for hosting our audio files. Hubstar for our logo. InitRD for the animated Discord logo. Londoner for our time syncs and various other contributions. He is the hand that keeps this show on the road.
We've been embarrassing him a lot. He's asked not to be commented on so often.
All right, fine then. Okay.
Has he really?
Yeah. How quintessentially Londoner of him.
Yeah.
And of course, the Linux Mint development team for the fine distro we love to talk about. Thanks, Clem. And Co. And that's a wrap, melon farmers.